There is a battle raging quietly within every person, a battle that often goes unnoticed but shapes the course of our lives more than any external circumstance. It is not fought in a war zone or on a political stage. It is fought in the silent hours of the morning when you are alone with your thoughts, in the small decisions you make each day, in the moments when you choose between ease and excellence, between distraction and creation. This is the battle against resistance. Resistance is subtle. It is the voice that tells you to wait, to start tomorrow, to do something easier, safer, or more comfortable. It is the feeling that something is not worth the effort, that you are not ready, that the world will not value what you offer. It comes dressed in fear, doubt, procrastination, and rationalization. Yet, the cost of yielding to resistance is high. It keeps dreams unrealized, talents hidden, and potential untapped. Every person who has accomplished something meaningful has confronted this invisible enemy, and every person who has failed to live fully has, in some measure, surrendered to it. From the outside, the lives of creators, innovators, and leaders often seem effortless. We look at their success and imagine that they were simply lucky or naturally talented. But the truth is that every act of creation requires a confrontation with resistance. A novelist begins a book, knowing it might take years to finish. An entrepreneur launches a venture, knowing it might fail. An artist picks up a brush or an instrument, unsure whether the work will ever be understood or appreciated. Each of these acts, on the surface, appears simple. But underneath, it is a struggle against the force that would have us avoid discomfort and cling to the familiar. Resistance is universal. It does not discriminate between beginners and experts, rich or poor, young or old. It appears whenever you attempt to do something that matters, to stretch yourself beyond routine, to pursue a goal that requires courage, discipline, and persistence. For some, resistance shows up as self-doubt, I am not good enough. For others, it appears as distraction, endless scrolling, constant busy work, or trivial obligations that fill the day but leave nothing created. For many, it is fear itself, the quiet terror of being exposed, rejected, or failing. The first step in this war is recognition. You cannot fight an enemy you do not see. Understanding resistance is not about judgment or guilt, it is about awareness. Every time you notice that hesitation, every time you feel an urge to avoid a task, every time you invent excuses to delay, you are seeing resistance in action. Awareness is powerful because it allows you to name it, to confront it, and to make a conscious choice rather than surrendering unconsciously. This is why the battle is so personal. Resistance cannot be fought with weapons or strategies designed for others. It is unique to each individual, shaped by their fears, desires, and ambitions. One person might be held back by fear of failure, another by fear of success. One might struggle with perfectionism, another with procrastination. The form may differ, but the purpose is the same. Resistance wants to keep you small, safe, and ordinary. And yet, the story of human achievement is a story of resistance overcome. The painter who finishes a masterpiece, the author who completes a novel, the entrepreneur who launches a company, the musician who performs despite trembling hands all have faced the same inner adversary. The secret is not that they were fearless, it is that they acted in spite of fear. They showed up when it mattered, every day, and they committed themselves to the work itself rather than the rewards it might bring. This journey is not easy. It demands persistence, discipline, and courage. It asks for a willingness to feel fear and still move forward, to meet doubt and still take action, to confront failure and still continue. And it requires a shift in perspective, the understanding that the act of doing is itself victory, that creativity and productivity are forms of resistance transformed into triumph. As we begin this exploration, imagine yourself standing at the threshold of a battlefield you have always known but never named. The enemy is invisible, yet palpable. You cannot avoid it, and no one can fight it for you. But armed with awareness, insight, and strategy, you can engage this enemy deliberately. You can turn the struggle into a path, and each day you show up becomes a step toward mastery, fulfillment, and freedom. This is the war of art, the daily, invisible, yet profoundly consequential battle to do your work, to realize your potential, and to bring your gifts into the world. It is not optional, it is inevitable. The question is not whether you will face resistance, but whether you will rise to meet it, and in doing so, transform your life. Part 1, The Enemy, Understanding Resistance. Every person who has ever tried to create, achieve, or pursue something meaningful has faced it. Resistance is the invisible force that rises the moment you decide to do something important. It does not announce itself with a bang, instead, it whispers, nudges, and distracts. It lurks in your daily routines, your thoughts, and even your dreams. Resistance is subtle, but it is relentless, and its goal is simple: to keep you from doing the work that matters. Think about the moments you have wanted to start something, writing a book, launching a project, learning a new skill, and suddenly, the easiest thing in the world became irresistible. A phone call, a social media scroll, a sudden need to reorganize your desk. These are not coincidences, these are manifestations of resistance. Resistance will always find the path of least effort, because it thrives on comfort, delay, and avoidance. Resistance is universal. It does not care who you are or what your goal is. It appears for the student who dreams of graduating with distinction, the writer who wants to complete a novel, and the entrepreneur who hopes to build a business from nothing. It does not distinguish between beginners and experts, the rich and the poor, the famous or the unknown. Its forms vary: procrastination, fear, self-doubt, distraction, but its essence is the same: it exists to stop progress. Consider the story of a young painter, eager to make her mark. Every morning, she promises herself to start her work at dawn. And every morning, she finds a reason not to. She cleans her brushes, rearranges her studio, or makes tea. Hours pass, and by the time she finally picks up the brush, the day is gone. Resistance has won another battle, not by force, but by subtle delay. This same pattern repeats itself for anyone who dares to create. Resistance does not announce defeat, it quietly persuades you to avoid the fight. Fear and resistance are intertwined. Fear of failure, fear of success, fear of judgment, all are disguises that resistance wears. The writer hesitates to finish a manuscript because what if no one likes it? The musician postpones recording because what if the performance falls flat? Resistance turns potential into paralysis. Yet the most striking thing about resistance is how it thrives even when success is inevitable. It does not disappear when talent or opportunity exists. In fact, it often grows stronger the closer you get to meaningful work. One of the ways resistance operates is by flattering you with excuses. You need more preparation. You will do better tomorrow. It is too difficult right now. Each excuse feels logical, rational, even responsible. But in reality, these are tactics of resistance. They lure you into comfort, and comfort is its ally. Resistance is not a villain with a clear face, it is a force of inertia, convincing you that delay and avoidance are reasonable choices. The stakes of yielding to resistance are high. Every day spent avoiding your calling is a day lost to fear and hesitation. Talents wither, ideas fade, and potential diminishes. Yet, there is hope. Recognition of resistance is the first step toward defeating it. By seeing it clearly, naming it, and acknowledging its presence, you can confront it. Awareness turns the invisible into something tangible. Once resistance is identified, it can be challenged. Real-world examples abound. Consider a writer who has dreamed of publishing a novel for decades. Resistance takes many forms: the busy day job, the endless internet scrolling, the persistent fear of rejection. Yet, when the writer commits to a daily schedule, even for just an hour, resistance begins to lose its grip. It can delay, distract, or frustrate, but it cannot withstand the consistency of deliberate action. This is the fundamental truth: resistance is defeated not by talent or luck, but by persistence and deliberate effort. Resistance is strongest at the threshold of meaningful work. The more significant the task, the greater the force it generates. A painter might face minor hesitation when sketching casually, but when attempting a masterpiece, the inner voice grows louder. An entrepreneur might tolerate small challenges, but launching a business brings the full weight of doubt, distraction, and fear. The size of resistance is proportional to the size of the work it opposes. Every victory over resistance strengthens resolve. Each time you show up, despite fear or hesitation, you assert control over your own life. Resistance is relentless, yet it is not invincible. Its power lies in your submission. By resisting it consciously, by sitting down to write, to create, or to act even when every part of you wants to avoid it, you chip away at its influence. The battle is daily, repetitive, and sometimes exhausting. Yet, the act of showing up is itself a triumph, a step toward mastery and freedom. Resistance is the enemy that every creator must know, yet it is also a teacher. It reveals the importance of discipline, focus, and courage. It exposes areas where we are tempted to settle for comfort over growth. It shows us the path we must take if we want to accomplish something of lasting value. Every person who has achieved greatness has faced resistance and made a choice, to yield or to persist. Those who persist discover the power of deliberate action and the profound satisfaction of overcoming the invisible enemy that lurks within. In every silent morning, every quiet hour of hesitation, and every moment of fear, resistance waits. It will never go away entirely. But the act of seeing it, naming it, and acting anyway is the start of victory. The first step in the war of art is simple yet profound: recognize the enemy, confront it, and do the work. In doing so, you begin a journey that transforms fear into courage, hesitation into action, and potential into achievement. Part 2, Combating Resistance, the Professional Mindset. Once you recognize resistance, the next challenge is learning how to fight it. Awareness alone is not enough. Knowing the enemy exists will not automatically make you conquer it. You need a strategy, a mindset, a way of showing up consistently even when fear, doubt, and distraction press against you. This is where the idea of the professional mindset comes in, a way of approaching creative work that turns effort into habit and persistence into power. The amateur waits for inspiration. The amateur hopes the conditions are perfect, that motivation will strike, or that the world will grant permission. The professional does none of these. The professional shows up every day, rain or shine, motivated or not, tired or energetic. They understand that work is not about mood or luck, it is about commitment. They recognize that resistance will always appear, but discipline and consistency neutralize its power. Consider the story of a young writer who dreams of finishing a novel. Each morning, she feels the pull of her bed, the urge to check her phone, the temptation to clean her apartment instead of writing. An amateur might succumb to these distractions, waiting for the perfect moment or the perfect idea. The professional, however, has a routine, a set time to write, a dedicated space, and a promise to produce words every day, no matter how small. Resistance may whisper, but she writes anyway. Each word becomes a small victory, each paragraph a step toward mastery. The professional mindset is built on action, not on feelings. It does not matter whether you feel ready, confident, or inspired. What matters is that you commit to your work as if your life depends on it. Because in a sense, it does. Showing up, doing the work, and facing resistance daily strengthens character, sharpens skill, and builds momentum. Success is rarely a single leap, it is the accumulation of consistent effort over time. Resistance is strongest in the early stages of any endeavor, when uncertainty is high and confidence is low. The professional does not wait for fear to disappear. They expect it. They accept it as part of the process. A painter may feel self-doubt as they begin a canvas. A composer may question every note as they start a piece of music. A business founder may second-guess every decision on the first day of a venture. The professional acknowledges these feelings but continues anyway. Their authority comes from action, not emotion. Routine and ritual are the tools of the professional. The novelist who writes the first word each morning, the entrepreneur who meets with their team daily, the artist who sketches without judging themselves, these small, disciplined actions create a rhythm that resistance cannot break. Over time, consistency builds confidence. The act of showing up repeatedly sends a message: the work is non-negotiable, and no internal force will prevent its completion. Resistance may try, but persistence wins. A key part of the professional mindset is humility. Professionals understand that mastery is a long journey. They do not expect perfection, and they do not measure progress solely by external recognition. A painter might spend years developing technique before selling a single piece. A writer may face countless rejections before a manuscript is published. The professional works not for applause but for the work itself, for the satisfaction of craft, and for the integrity of effort. Resistance cannot easily challenge this, because the professional's purpose is internal, grounded in discipline rather than ego. Real-world examples illustrate this principle clearly. Consider the story of a musician who, after years of casual practice, decided to treat their art like a profession. They scheduled rehearsals, set measurable goals, and committed to daily improvement. Progress was slow at first, but as the habit solidified, skill multiplied. The musician did not wait for inspiration, inspiration followed the routine. Each day of disciplined effort weakened resistance and reinforced the identity of a professional. The professional mindset also involves accountability. It is easier to resist when you are alone, when no one is watching, and when failure feels private. Professionals, however, create structures that make avoidance costly. They set deadlines, share commitments with mentors or peers, and track progress. Resistance thrives in secrecy and obscurity, but when your work is visible to yourself and others, it becomes harder to surrender. Action generates momentum, momentum generates confidence, confidence diminishes resistance. Ultimately, adopting a professional mindset transforms your relationship with fear and doubt. You no longer see them as barriers, but as signals that you are engaging in meaningful work. Resistance is not a punishment, it is an indicator that the path you are on matters. When you respond by showing up, by doing the work regardless of fear, you claim power over your own life. Each day becomes an opportunity to grow stronger, more skilled, and more resilient. The professional does not hope. The professional acts. The professional does not wait. The professional shows up. In this way, the war against resistance becomes less about fighting an enemy and more about forging a character capable of meeting any challenge. Each act of discipline, each step into discomfort, and each completion of work is a victory in the ongoing war of art. By embracing the professional mindset, you move from avoidance to action, from hesitation to progress, and from fear to mastery. Resistance may never vanish entirely, but it becomes less frightening, less powerful, and ultimately, less effective. The battle is not avoided, it is faced with courage, persistence, and the steady resolve of the professional. And in that resolve, the seeds of achievement are sown, growing steadily into the work, the mastery, and the life you have always envisioned. This completes Part 2, Combating Resistance, the Professional Mindset. Part 3, Turning Pro, Commitment to the Creative Life. There comes a moment in every creative journey when the choice becomes unavoidable, to remain an amateur, dabbling in dreams and delaying effort, or to turn pro and dedicate yourself fully to the work. Turning pro is not about gaining fame, recognition, or immediate success. It is about making a commitment to the craft, to the discipline of showing up, and to the long, often unglamorous process of creating something of value. This is the point where resistance meets its match, because the professional refuses to be deterred by fear, doubt, or delay. Consider the story of a young sculptor who had always admired the great masters. For years, he experimented in his small studio, working sporadically when inspiration struck. He created pieces that he felt proud of, yet most were never shared, never refined, never completed. The sculptor loved the idea of being an artist, but he had not yet turned pro. Then, one day, he made a conscious choice. He set a daily schedule, committed to finishing one piece every month, and treated his studio like a workplace rather than a hobby. The first week was difficult. Resistance appeared in the form of tiredness, excuses, and second-guessing. But by continuing each day, the sculptor discovered a shift, his skill grew, his confidence strengthened, and the work itself became a teacher. Turning pro had transformed his relationship with both resistance and creativity. Turning pro requires more than persistence, it demands a change in identity. The amateur identifies with comfort, with occasional bursts of effort, with external validation. The professional identifies with the work itself. They accept that setbacks, criticism, and fear are inevitable, yet they do not allow these forces to define their choices. A writer who turns pro does not stop because of rejection. An entrepreneur does not abandon a venture because of early losses. The commitment is not to outcomes but to the act of doing, to the integrity of effort, and to the mastery that comes from repetition and persistence. One of the most important aspects of turning pro is consistency. A professional does not wait for inspiration or ideal circumstances. They create work regardless of mood, energy, or recognition. A musician, for instance, may have days when the notes feel wrong or the technique falters, yet they practice, rehearse, and perform without excuse. Each session strengthens skill and diminishes resistance. This consistency becomes the lifeline of a creative life, it is what separates those who dream from those who produce. Turning pro also involves respecting the craft itself. The professional treats work with seriousness, dedicating time, energy, and focus. They do not cut corners or pursue shortcuts, even when it would be easy to do so. Consider the example of a software developer learning a new programming language. Instead of skimming tutorials or relying solely on copying code, the professional invests the time to understand the principles, solve problems methodically, and build real projects. The act of fully engaging with the craft becomes a defense against resistance, because half-hearted effort cannot withstand the pressure of deliberate work. Another critical aspect of turning pro is the willingness to endure discomfort. Resistance thrives on avoidance, and avoidance is only possible when the task feels threatening or challenging. The professional accepts that discomfort is part of the process. A painter facing a blank canvas feels uncertainty. A writer staring at an empty page feels fear of inadequacy. The professional moves forward anyway. They recognize that the path to mastery is not smooth, but each step through difficulty strengthens resilience and expands capability. Turning pro also reframes the relationship with failure. The amateur sees failure as proof of inadequacy, a signal to stop or retreat. The professional sees failure as feedback, a necessary part of learning and growth. A young filmmaker may release a first project that is poorly received. An amateur would quit, discouraged by criticism or low viewership. The professional studies the response, learns from mistakes, and prepares for the next project. Failure becomes a teacher rather than an obstacle, and resistance loses its power when confronted with this mindset. Commitment to the creative life extends beyond individual projects. It is a lifelong approach, a way of existing in the world with dedication, discipline, and integrity. The professional protects time and space for work, cultivates habits that support creativity, and prioritizes effort over external validation. Resistance may still appear, but it becomes less formidable, because the professional's identity is rooted in action and purpose, not in fear or hesitation. The rewards of turning pro are subtle but profound. They do not always come as recognition or material success. Instead, they appear in the growth of skill, the deepening of focus, and the satisfaction of producing work that is meaningful, no matter how small the audience. The sculptor who completes a piece feels the quiet triumph of mastery. The writer who finishes a chapter experiences the fulfillment of persistence. These victories are internal, but they shape every aspect of life, from confidence and self-discipline to courage and resilience. Turning pro is a choice that each person must make consciously. It is the decision to fight resistance daily, to show up regardless of mood or circumstance, to commit fully to the craft, and to measure success by effort rather than outcome. It is the point at which work becomes a discipline, creativity becomes a practice, and life becomes aligned with purpose. In that commitment lies freedom, the freedom to create, to grow, and to live authentically. Every act of turning pro chips away at resistance, transforming fear into courage, hesitation into action, and dreams into tangible results. The amateur remains trapped in delay, the professional moves forward, steadily, deliberately, and with resolve. This is the essence of turning pro, the conscious, persistent, and disciplined commitment to the creative life. Once this choice is made, resistance may never disappear entirely, but it loses its power to dictate your life. The path is challenging, but it leads to mastery, fulfillment, and the freedom to bring your gifts into the world. This completes Part 3, Turning Pro, Commitment to the Creative Life. Part 4, Beyond Resistance, Higher Forces and Inspiration. Once a person has committed to turning pro, a remarkable transformation begins. The battle against resistance does not vanish, but a new dimension of creative work emerges, a connection to something larger than oneself. This is where inspiration, muses, and higher forces enter the story. The professional discovers that the work itself has an energy, a flow, and a presence that can guide, encourage, and reward persistence. Turning pro opens the door to these forces, but only through effort, discipline, and courage. Imagine a composer who has spent years practicing and perfecting the craft. Every morning, the same struggle with doubt and distraction appears. But because the composer has committed fully, these moments of resistance are no longer obstacles that stop work. Instead, they become part of the rhythm, part of the preparation for breakthrough. One day, while immersed in the routine of composition, an idea appears unexpected, sudden, yet perfectly timed. It feels as if it came from outside, as if a force beyond personal effort has joined in. This is the result of turning pro. Consistent effort aligns human action with creative energy, making space for inspiration to flow. Higher forces or muses are not passive, they respond to commitment. They do not favor the hesitant, the distracted, or the half-hearted. They show up when preparation meets opportunity, when discipline meets intention. Resistance often tempts us to wait for inspiration, to avoid the discomfort of showing up daily. Yet, inspiration does not appear in idleness, it is attracted to effort. The artist who writes, paints, or builds each day invites these forces to participate, transforming ordinary labor into extraordinary creation. Consider the story of an inventor who worked tirelessly on a prototype in a small garage. Each day was filled with trial, error, and frustration. Resistance was constant, neighbors doubted, friends questioned, and self-doubt whispered endlessly. Yet the inventor continued, compelled not by immediate results but by the discipline of effort. One evening, after countless failed attempts, a solution appeared, a spark of clarity that solved the problem in a way that had seemed impossible before. It was not magic in the literal sense, it was the result of persistence meeting a moment of insight, a higher force responding to unwavering commitment. The professional understands that these higher forces are allies, but they are not substitutes. They cannot replace effort, discipline, or resilience. The musician who hopes for inspiration but avoids practice will find none. The writer who waits for the perfect idea but does not write will remain blocked. These forces reward work that is already in motion. They are not a guarantee, but a partner, magnifying human effort into something greater than expected. Higher forces also teach humility. The professional realizes that while skill, knowledge, and discipline are essential, they are not sufficient alone. There is a mystery to creation that cannot be entirely controlled. A painter may plan each stroke meticulously, but the final piece often carries a life beyond intention. A composer may follow theory perfectly, yet the music may resonate in ways unexpected. By acknowledging these forces, the professional learns to release ego and surrender to the process, trusting that persistence aligns with opportunity and insight. Stories of great artists, scientists, and leaders reveal this truth. Consider a writer who had struggled for years, submitting manuscripts to publishers without success. Each rejection could have ended the pursuit. Yet the writer persisted, dedicating hours to craft, attending workshops, and refining skill. Eventually, an idea emerged, an unexpected inspiration that transformed the story into a bestseller. This was not sudden luck, it was the culmination of daily effort, persistence, and readiness to receive the gift of insight. Resistance had been defeated, and higher forces had responded to commitment. Inspiration also becomes a teacher. It shows the professional the value of focus, the importance of routine, and the necessity of courage. Each time a breakthrough occurs, it reinforces the lesson: effort and discipline create conditions for extraordinary outcomes. It is not enough to wait or hope. The professional learns to respect the process, to endure the struggle, and to embrace the repetitive labor that opens the door to extraordinary insight. Another dimension of these higher forces is the sense of purpose they provide. The professional experiences work not merely as a task but as a calling. The act of creation becomes meaningful in itself, and resistance is no longer an enemy but a signal that the work is significant. Fear, doubt, and hesitation mark the edges of growth, they indicate that the effort is important and worth pursuing. The professional sees these signs as guides rather than obstacles, navigating the inner terrain with discipline and courage. Ultimately, moving beyond resistance is about alignment, aligning human effort with persistence, preparation, and a readiness to receive. Inspiration is not a random gift, it is the echo of consistent action meeting opportunity. Each day of showing up, each act of courage against fear, creates a rhythm that allows creative energy to flow. The professional discovers that resistance may always be present, but it cannot stop a mind and heart committed to the work. By embracing higher forces and seeking inspiration through disciplined effort, the professional transforms the creative life into a partnership with something greater than the self. The work becomes more than labor, it becomes a channel through which ideas, insight, and innovation emerge. Resistance loses its power, not because it is absent, but because it is met with persistent, focused action that opens space for forces beyond individual control to contribute. In this way, the professional learns a profound truth: creativity is not only a battle, it is a collaboration. Resistance challenges, discipline strengthens, and higher forces reward. Each act of showing up becomes a step in a journey where human effort and inspiration meet, creating work that resonates, endures, and fulfills the purpose of turning pro. This completes Part 4, Beyond Resistance, Higher Forces and Inspiration. Part 5, Challenges and Victories, The Creative Journey. The path of creation is rarely straight or smooth. Every person who pursues meaningful work encounters challenges, internal and external, that test courage, persistence, and patience. These challenges are not signs of failure, they are the very indicators that the work is significant. Resistance does not disappear once a person turns pro, it evolves, shifting form and intensity, always waiting to push the committed creator off course. The journey is a test, but it is also where victories are earned. Consider the story of an aspiring novelist who had dedicated years to writing her first book. The process was grueling, mornings filled with self-doubt, afternoons lost to editing and rewriting, nights spent worrying about whether anyone would read or value her work. Resistance appeared constantly tempting her with easier distractions, whispering that her efforts were pointless, and magnifying every minor setback into a sign to quit. Yet, she continued, step by step, page by page. Each completed chapter was a small victory. Each morning she showed up a triumph over the inner voice urging delay. Challenges are inevitable because meaningful work asks for growth. The musician learning a complex composition experiences frustration as notes refuse to fall correctly under fingers. The entrepreneur launching a business faces unexpected failures, competition, and uncertainty. The painter starting a new piece confronts doubt at every stroke. These obstacles are not exceptions, they are the standard of creative work. Resistance thrives at moments of difficulty, yet these moments are precisely the opportunity for growth. Every challenge met builds skill, patience, and resilience. Victories, on the other hand, are both subtle and profound. They do not always appear as recognition or tangible reward. A musician finally perfecting a difficult passage, a writer finishing a chapter, a designer solving a persistent problem. These small triumphs are proof that persistence and discipline can overcome resistance. Each victory strengthens confidence and reinforces identity as a professional. They are markers along the journey, signals that effort is meaningful and that progress, no matter how incremental, is possible. The journey also teaches the value of resilience. One painter's first exhibitions were met with indifference, critics overlooked her work, and buyers were scarce. Rather than abandoning her dream, she showed up day after day, creating new pieces, refining technique, and engaging with her craft. Over time, her persistence paid off not because luck suddenly intervened, but because repeated effort transformed skill and prepared the way for opportunity. Each act of showing up became a shield against resistance, each finished painting a statement of triumph over doubt. Challenges can be emotional as well as practical. The fear of failure or rejection is powerful, and it often appears when one is closest to a breakthrough. An author nearing the end of a manuscript may feel paralyzed by the thought of criticism. An entrepreneur about to launch a new product may be haunted by the possibility of public failure. These moments are critical, they reveal the stakes of the work and the strength of resistance. Professionals do not ignore fear, they acknowledge it and act anyway. They understand that courage is not the absence of fear, but the choice to act despite it. Victory is rarely instantaneous. It accumulates through consistent effort, reflection, and learning. Each day, the professional confronts challenges and makes small progress. Each failure provides insight, each setback teaches strategy. Over time, the accumulation of these small victories leads to mastery and fulfillment. The creative journey is less about dramatic leaps and more about the disciplined steps taken every day, repeated consistently, despite resistance. Real-world examples of this process are everywhere. Consider a filmmaker who spent years making short films before achieving recognition. Early works were rough, underfunded, and sometimes rejected from festivals. Each rejection could have ended the journey, yet the filmmaker persisted. Through each challenge, skill improved, stories became sharper, and resilience strengthened. The eventual success was not the product of luck alone, it was the result of victories won in the daily struggle against resistance. The journey also reveals a deeper truth, that creative work is inherently valuable, independent of external reward. The act of showing up, of producing work in the face of doubt, is itself a triumph. Completing a novel, composing a song, or launching a product carries an intrinsic satisfaction that external approval cannot match. These victories are personal and lasting, forming a foundation of confidence, self-respect, and the understanding that one has overcome inner obstacles repeatedly. Challenges and victories are inseparable. Without resistance, there would be no growth, no test of skill or courage, no triumph to celebrate. The struggle is part of the work itself, and every obstacle presents an opportunity to demonstrate persistence, integrity, and commitment. The professional embraces these challenges, knowing that each one met, no matter how small, is a victory that moves the journey forward. Ultimately, the creative journey is defined not by the absence of resistance, but by the response to it. The professional learns to meet obstacles as opportunities, to see failure as instruction, and to celebrate progress, no matter how incremental. Every challenge confronted and every small victory achieved strengthens the resolve to continue, creating momentum that propels the individual beyond doubt and hesitation. In this journey, the battle against resistance becomes a pathway to mastery, fulfillment, and the realization of potential. This completes Part 5, Challenges and Victories, the Creative Journey. Part 6, The Inner War, Self-Mastery and Discipline. The most formidable battles are often not against external obstacles, but within ourselves. Resistance is not only an enemy of creative work, it is a reflection of inner habits, doubts, and weaknesses that must be confronted daily. The war of art is as much about mastering oneself as it is about producing work. Discipline, focus, and self-mastery are the weapons that turn ordinary effort into extraordinary achievement. Consider the story of a young athlete striving to compete at the national level. The physical training is grueling, but the hardest part is mental. Every day, she must overcome the temptation to rest, to eat poorly, or to skip practice. Her muscles ache, her mind protests, and resistance whispers that she is tired, that tomorrow is good enough, that one day off will not matter. Yet she knows that victory depends on her ability to master herself. Each time she chooses to push forward, to endure discomfort, and to follow her routine, she strengthens more than her body. She strengthens her character, resolve, and discipline. Self-mastery is about understanding that the inner world governs action. The professional recognizes patterns of procrastination, distraction, and doubt. They study these tendencies, not to judge themselves, but to take control. A writer may notice that fear rises every morning before opening the manuscript. Instead of waiting for the fear to pass, they acknowledge it and begin writing regardless. Discipline turns awareness into action, and action transforms habit into mastery. Daily routines are essential in the cultivation of self-mastery. The painter who dedicates a set time each morning to sketch, the programmer who codes for a fixed period each day, the musician who practices scales consistently. These habits are small acts of defiance against resistance. Repetition may seem mundane, but it is through this consistency that the mind learns to act beyond whim, distraction, or emotion. Discipline does not eliminate fear, it channels it, transforming hesitation into productivity. Self-mastery also requires patience. Growth is rarely immediate, and results do not always reflect effort. A designer learning a new skill may spend months producing work that feels inadequate. A composer may struggle with a single piece for weeks. Yet, professionals understand that mastery is cumulative. Each hour of focused effort, every failure studied, and every challenge met contributes to long-term progress. Patience becomes a form of resistance against resistance itself, allowing persistence to compound into skill, insight, and accomplishment. Emotional resilience is another cornerstone of the inner war. Resistance often attacks through mood, insecurity, and doubt. An author staring at an empty page may feel despair, a painter may feel their work is meaningless, and an entrepreneur may feel the weight of repeated failures. Self-mastery is the ability to recognize these emotional currents, to navigate them without being swept away. It is the practice of showing up consistently, independent of feelings, and trusting that effort itself builds results over time. Real-world examples demonstrate this principle. Consider a scientist working on a complex problem for years with no immediate success. Each experiment fails, each hypothesis proves wrong. External accolades are non-existent, and the path forward feels uncertain. Yet, the scientist persists, guided by discipline and a commitment to the work itself. Over time, breakthrough comes not as a sudden stroke of luck, but as the culmination of consistent effort, careful observation, and mastery over personal doubt and distraction. The inner war has been fought daily, quietly, yet decisively. Self-mastery extends beyond work itself, it shapes every aspect of life. The habits of discipline developed in creative pursuit carry over into health, relationships, and personal growth. Resistance may still appear in these areas, tempting one to procrastinate or avoid responsibility. Yet, the professional's mind, trained in consistency and courage, responds with focus and action. Life itself becomes a field in which the skills of self-mastery are applied continuously, reinforcing the ability to overcome resistance in all forms. Discipline is also a safeguard against fleeting motivation. Inspiration may come and go, but routine and commitment remain. The musician who practices daily, regardless of excitement, ensures that skill grows even when passion wanes. The writer who writes every morning continues progress even when ideas feel thin. In this way, self-mastery transforms the creative life from a series of emotional highs and lows into a steady, resilient pursuit of mastery. Ultimately, the inner war is both the greatest challenge and the greatest opportunity. Resistance will always exist, but by mastering habits, emotions, and focus, a person gains control over their actions and, in turn, their destiny. Each act of discipline, each moment of perseverance, and each choice to continue despite fear strengthens character and brings the work and the self closer to fulfillment. The professional learns that victory over resistance is not only external, it is internal. The quiet triumphs of discipline, the small victories of focus, and the daily commitment to effort accumulate, transforming life itself. In this ongoing inner war, the battle against fear, doubt, and distraction becomes a source of strength, creating a foundation for achievement, creativity, and enduring fulfillment. By mastering oneself, the professional moves beyond mere survival in the face of resistance. They engage life actively, embrace challenges, and cultivate the discipline necessary to turn effort into results. The war of art is fought daily, in silent moments of choice, in routines that demand courage, and in the steadfast commitment to becoming not only a creator but a master of self. This completes Part 6, The Inner War, Self-Mastery and Discipline. Part 7, The Rewards of Creative Victory. After years of battling resistance, cultivating discipline, and mastering the self, a remarkable transformation occurs. The professional begins to experience the rewards of creative victory. These rewards are not always immediate or obvious, and they are rarely measured solely in fame, recognition, or wealth. They are deeper, more enduring, and profoundly personal: the satisfaction of fulfilling potential, the joy of creation, and the freedom that comes from having conquered the invisible forces that once held you back. Consider the story of an author who spent decades writing in obscurity. Early works were rejected repeatedly, friends and peers questioned the effort, and every day felt like a struggle against doubt. Yet the author persisted, showing up daily, refining skill, and embracing the discipline of turning pro. When the first book was finally published, it brought not only recognition but also a quiet, powerful sense of accomplishment. The reward was not just the external success, it was the internal victory over fear, hesitation, and resistance itself. The journey had transformed the author, making every small, consistent effort meaningful. Creative victory is deeply tied to purpose. When a musician completes a composition that resonates with audiences, it is not merely a performance, it is the manifestation of years of dedication, struggle, and persistence. Each note reflects hours of practice, each measure embodies the fight against distraction and doubt. The reward lies in the alignment of effort with intention, in seeing one's work take shape in a way that communicates, inspires, or moves others. It is proof that perseverance and mastery can transform vision into reality. The journey toward creative victory also strengthens confidence. The painter who once feared the blank canvas now approaches it with calm assurance. The entrepreneur who once hesitated to launch now navigates uncertainty with courage and clarity. Confidence is not born of ease or luck, it is forged in the daily act of showing up, in the repeated triumphs over resistance, and in the knowledge that effort leads to progress. Each victory reinforces the capacity to face future challenges, creating a cycle of growth that extends far beyond a single project or accomplishment. Another reward is freedom: the freedom to create without fear, the freedom to pursue meaningful work, and the freedom to live authentically. A professional who has confronted resistance repeatedly understands that external circumstances no longer dictate action. They can produce, innovate, and contribute regardless of recognition or reward. This freedom is both empowering and transformative, allowing life to be shaped by choice, purpose, and dedication rather than by hesitation, fear, or avoidance. Creative victory also has a ripple effect. When one person overcomes resistance and achieves meaningful work, it inspires others to do the same. Consider an inventor whose breakthrough changes an industry. Their persistence and courage serve as an example to colleagues, peers, and future generations. The work itself becomes a testament to the power of discipline and resilience, showing that meaningful achievements are possible when effort is consistent and fear is faced head-on. In this way, the rewards of creative victory extend beyond the individual, influencing communities, industries, and even cultures. The satisfaction of creative victory is compounded by perspective. The professional recognizes that resistance was always present and that each struggle, doubt, and failure was part of the journey. Looking back, it becomes clear that the difficulties were not obstacles but essential teachers. The hours of effort, the repeated disappointments, and the moments of fear all contributed to growth, skill, and understanding. Creative victory is not merely the result of talent, it is the product of persistence, discipline, and courage sustained over time. Even small victories carry immense value. Completing a challenging project, finishing a difficult chapter, or mastering a new skill can provide profound satisfaction. These incremental achievements remind us that the journey itself is the reward. By committing to the work, confronting resistance, and turning pro, the professional discovers that life is transformed. Effort becomes meaningful, challenges become opportunities, and success is measured not only in outcomes but in the courage and persistence displayed along the way. Ultimately, creative victory affirms a fundamental truth: the most valuable rewards come not from avoiding struggle, but from engaging it fully. Resistance is never entirely gone, but each confrontation strengthens resolve, skill, and character. The professional emerges not only with tangible achievements but also with an inner mastery that shapes every aspect of life. Joy, satisfaction, freedom, confidence, and purpose are the fruits of the war of art, rewards earned by those who choose to face fear, persevere, and dedicate themselves to meaningful work. Creative victory is the culmination of effort, discipline, and courage. It is proof that turning pro, confronting resistance, and committing to the work can transform dreams into reality. It is both a destination and a journey defined by persistence, struggle, and daily triumphs, and a destination marked by fulfillment, mastery, and the profound satisfaction of knowing that every challenge faced, every fear confronted, and every act of creation was a step toward a life fully lived. This completes Part 7, The Rewards of Creative Victory. The journey we have explored is not just a guide to creativity, it is a map of human potential. Every struggle, every moment of doubt, and every act of persistence shapes who we become and what we are capable of achieving. Resistance is real, relentless, and universal, yet it is not invincible. By recognizing it, confronting it, and committing to the work, we discover a strength within ourselves that cannot be taken away. Turning pro is more than a choice, it is a lifestyle. It is the decision to show up daily, to embrace discipline, and to face fear with courage. It is the commitment to effort, to mastery, and to aligning action with purpose. Along the way, challenges and setbacks are inevitable, but each obstacle becomes an opportunity to grow, learn, and reaffirm dedication. Small victories accumulate into skill, confidence, and the freedom to create authentically. In the end, the rewards of creative victory are profound. They are not measured merely in recognition or material success, but in fulfillment, self-mastery, and the joy of producing work that matters. By confronting resistance and committing to the creative life, we step into a path where effort meets inspiration, discipline meets freedom, and dreams become reality. The war of art is ongoing, but each act of courage brings us closer to mastery and a life fully lived. What if life was not a straight line? What if success did not follow the rules we have always been told to follow? What if, instead of waiting your turn, you could find another way in a hidden path no one talks about? This is the question that sits at the heart of The Third Door by Alex Banayan. And it is not just a book. It is a journey. A real-life adventure of a college student who dared to believe that success was not reserved only for those born into privilege or those who checked all the boxes. It is about a different path. The Third Door. Imagine you are at a nightclub. There are 3 ways to get in. The first door is the main entrance, where 99% of people wait in line, hoping they will eventually get in if they are patient enough. The second door is the VIP entrance, the kind reserved for the rich, famous, or well-connected. But then there is the third door. It is the door where someone sneaks around the alley, climbs over the dumpster, bangs on the kitchen door, and finds their way inside through hustle, creativity, and persistence. That is the third door. And that is exactly how Alex Banayan decided to approach life. At just 18 years old, Banayan was a freshman in college, studying to become a doctor. It was the path his family expected him to take. It was safe. It was respectable. But it was not his dream. He felt restless, curious, and deeply unsure of what he truly wanted. What he did know was that he had questions. Big questions. What does it take to succeed? How did the most successful people in the world launch their careers? And more importantly, could someone like him without money, without connections, learn to do the same? Rather than waiting for answers to come, he made a bold decision. He hacked the Price is Right game show, won a sailboat, sold it, and used the money to go on a 7-year quest to track down some of the world's most iconic people. He wanted to interview them. Not about fame, but about how they started. How they got in the door. This journey took him from awkward hallway run-ins to meetings with people like Bill Gates, Lady Gaga, Steve Wozniak, Maya Angelou, Tim Ferriss, and many more. But this is not just a highlight reel of interviews. It is a book about courage, rejection, confusion, and clarity. About what it feels like to chase something big without knowing where it will lead. It is a book for anyone who has ever felt stuck in life, who has ever looked at success from the outside and wondered, how did they do it? The beauty of The Third Door is that it does not pretend the journey is easy. In fact, Alex Banayan lays bare the anxiety, the awkwardness, the emotional breakdowns, and the personal sacrifices he faced along the way. That is what makes the story so relatable. Because most people do not have a neatly organized resume by age 25. Most people are figuring it out as they go. This book gives you permission to be one of them. At its core, The Third Door is about agency. It is about refusing to sit back and accept that there is only one path. It is about questioning the script you were handed and writing your own. It is about learning that there is always another way even when no one else sees it. In this audiobook summary, brought to you by Books Arena, we will walk you through Banayan's journey in 7 parts. Each part will not just share his experiences, but unpack the deeper lessons that can help you in your own life. You will hear stories of bold decisions, unexpected failures, breakthrough moments, and the mindset shifts that separate those who wait from those who act. Whether you are an entrepreneur, a student, a creator, or simply someone searching for direction, this story will remind you of something vital: success is not about playing by the rules. It is about knowing which rules to break, and having the courage to do it. So get ready. This is not just another success story. This is a call to action. To stop waiting in line. To stop hoping for permission. To start looking for your third door. Let us begin. Part 1, The Spark, Questioning the Default Path. Alex Banayan did not start out as a best-selling author or a world-traveling interviewer. He began, like many of us, as a confused college student. He was 19 years old, sitting in a lecture hall at the University of Southern California, and the question burning in his mind was not about medicine, even though he was on track to become a doctor. It was something deeper, something personal. He wondered, what do I really want to do with my life? It was a question that millions of students ask but rarely act on. He looked around and saw his classmates going through the motions, studying for exams, worrying about internships, and planning out careers they were not even sure they wanted. Everyone seemed to be moving forward because that was what they were supposed to do. But Alex felt stuck. And that feeling is where the story begins. He started asking questions that did not fit into a classroom. How did people like Bill Gates, Steven Spielberg, and Maya Angelou launch their careers? What were their first steps? Did they follow a traditional path? Or did they find another way? These questions consumed him, not just as curiosity but as necessity. He was not looking for motivational quotes. He was looking for a real blueprint, something practical and honest that could show him how to go from uncertainty to impact. But there was a problem. Nobody was teaching this. There were no classes on how to chase your dream. No syllabus for building a meaningful career from scratch. And that is when the idea for the third door took shape. Alex imagined life as a nightclub. The first door is the main entrance, where almost everyone waits in line, hoping that if they follow the rules and stay patient, they will get in eventually. The second door is for the privileged, the VIPs, the celebrities, the connected few. But then there is the third door. It is the door where someone jumps out of line, runs around the back alley, climbs over a dumpster, sneaks in through the kitchen, and finds their way into the club. That third door is not obvious, and it is never easy. But it exists. This metaphor hit him like lightning. And he knew then that he had to find out how the most successful people found their third door. How they broke into their industries, got past the gatekeepers, and created their own path. He decided he would track them down, interview them, and learn directly from the source. But there was just one problem: he was a 19-year-old college student with no connections, no credentials, and no money. Most people would stop there. But instead of giving up, Alex decided to do something wild. He found out that the Price is Right game show was holding an open audition in Los Angeles. He had never been on television before, had no plan, and did not even know the rules of the game. But he saw an opportunity. If he could get on the show, win something valuable, and sell it, maybe that would fund his mission. He studied every episode he could find. He memorized price patterns. He researched winning strategies. And when the day came, he showed up in line with boundless energy and a ridiculous amount of hope. To his own shock, he was called to come on down. He made it to the stage. And by some strange mix of luck, strategy, and belief, he actually won a sailboat. He had never sailed a day in his life. Alex sold the sailboat and used the money to begin his journey. That was the moment his real education began. It was no longer about textbooks and tests. It was about emails, phone calls, rejection, hustle, and uncertainty. It was about figuring out how to get past gatekeepers and how to convince the most influential people in the world to give him a few minutes of their time. But more importantly, it was about transformation. This first part of his story is not just exciting, it is essential. It reminds us that questioning the default path is not a weakness, it is a beginning. We live in a world that pushes us towards stability, predictability, and the comfort of staying in line. But real growth starts when we have the courage to ask, is there another way? Think about your own life. Have you ever been on a path that felt safe but not true to who you are? Have you ever felt like you were doing everything right, but still something was missing? That feeling, as uncomfortable as it is, can be the spark. The beginning of your third door. Alex Banayan's story does not begin with success. It begins with doubt, confusion, and a decision to take a leap. He was not ready. He was not special. He was simply willing to try. And that is what makes the third door real. It is not about genius or talent. It is about effort, belief, and finding the courage to look for the door that no one else sees. In the next part, we will follow Alex as he begins his quest. The first steps are never smooth, and the journey is filled with failure. But within those failures lie the greatest lessons. And that is where the magic begins. Part 2, the quest begins, rejections, hustle, and the power of boldness. After selling the sailboat and deciding to begin his journey, Alex Banayan stepped into a world far more chaotic, uncertain, and humbling than he could have imagined. The vision sounded exciting: travel the country, meet icons, and unlock the secrets of success. But what he quickly realized was that chasing greatness was not as glamorous as it seemed. In fact, it was mostly filled with rejection. Alex started emailing. Hundreds of emails. He wrote to CEOs, entertainers, athletes, best-selling authors, anyone he believed could give insight into how they launched their careers. He hoped for enthusiasm, or at least a response. What he got, mostly, was silence. This is a crucial stage in the third door. Because in real life, before doors open, you usually get 20 slammed in your face. He tried every strategy he could think of. He rewrote subject lines, refined his pitches, and personalized every message. Still, the replies were rare. It was not just frustrating, it was painful. The kind of pain that makes you doubt your idea and yourself. But here lies a lesson: success is not handed to you. It is fought for, slowly, one unanswered message at a time. Alex realized he needed to think differently. So instead of waiting on emails, he began to show up in person. One example stands out: his pursuit of Tim Ferriss, the best-selling author of the 4-Hour Workweek. Alex had read his book and felt strongly that Tim could be a game-changing interview. But Tim did not respond to any emails. So Alex flew to a conference where Tim was speaking. No appointment. No guarantee. Just hope. He waited in the hallway for hours, rehearsing what he would say. And when Tim finally appeared, Alex approached him. Nervous. Sweating. Tim was polite but firm. "I'm not doing interviews right now," he said. Rejection again. But here is the thing: Alex did not let that be the end. A few months later, he tried again, this time with better preparation and a stronger reason. He studied Tim's work deeply and sent a message not just asking for help, but explaining how much Tim's philosophy had already impacted him. Eventually, Tim replied. And agreed. This was not luck. It was persistence, creativity, and respect. Another important moment came when Alex wanted to meet Elliot Bisnow, the founder of Summaries, a private community of entrepreneurs. Alex had no connection to Elliot. No introduction. So what did he do? He found Elliot's email address and sent him one line: "I have to meet you." Elliot did not reply. So Alex sent a second email. Then a third. Then dozens more. Still nothing. Finally, Alex wrote, "If you say yes, I will fly to wherever you are, even if just for 5 minutes." That got Elliot's attention. Elliot replied with the time and place: Park City, Utah, in 2 days. Alex booked a flight with money he could barely afford, landed in Utah, and took a cab through the snow to meet Elliot. It was bold, possibly reckless. But it worked. That meeting became one of the most important turning points in Alex's journey. Elliot did not just give advice, he became a connector. He opened new doors. These moments are powerful because they reveal something deeper than determination. They show that people respond to courage. In a world full of automated messages and shallow outreach, genuine human effort stands out. Let us pause for a second and reflect. How often do we give up after the first rejection? How many times do we convince ourselves that if someone does not reply, it means we are not worthy? The third door teaches the opposite. It says, if they do not answer, try again. If they say no, find another way. Hustle is not just about doing more, it is about doing better, smarter, bolder. And yes, it is uncomfortable. Putting yourself out there always is. In the real world, people are busy. They are skeptical. And they have no reason to believe in you until you give them one. That is what Alex Banayan did, not once, but over and over. Every big name he eventually spoke to, Tim Ferriss, Elliot Bisnow, and later on Bill Gates and Lady Gaga, came through this relentless persistence. There is also an important point about preparation. Banayan did not just send generic messages. He studied every person deeply. He learned their work, their values, and their unique stories. When he finally got a response, he was ready not just to ask questions, but to have a conversation that mattered. Real-world example? Think of job hunting. Thousands of people submit the same resumes to the same job boards. But the candidates who stand out are often the ones who follow up, customize their message, show up at a company event, or connect with employees on LinkedIn with purpose. That is third-door thinking. Or take a small business trying to land its first clients. Cold emails fail. Ads do not always work. But when a founder reaches out personally, with care and detail, and shows up to pitch in person, it changes the outcome. People invest in people, not in templates. So part 2 of the third door is all about that uncomfortable middle stage of the journey, the part where nothing seems to work, where rejection feels endless, but where every no is pushing you closer to a yes. It is about learning that asking is a skill, and persistence is a strategy. And when done with honesty, effort, and respect, people begin to notice. In the next part, we will explore how Alex finally landed one of his most important interviews, an encounter with a global icon that tested not only his courage, but his entire belief in this mission. The third door is not just something you find. It is something you create. Part 3, Chasing Icons, the Larry King Encounter and the Power of Mentorship. When Alex Banayan set out on his journey, he believed that if he could just land one big interview, everything would change. He thought that one conversation with a legendary figure would open up all the doors that were shut in his face. What he did not realize at the time was that success does not usually arrive through breakthroughs. It comes through bridges, and sometimes, those bridges come in the form of mentors. Enter Larry King. Larry King was one of the most iconic interviewers of all time. Over 6 decades, he had spoken to presidents, world leaders, celebrities, and authors. For Alex, meeting Larry King was not just about the interview. It was about learning how to ask the right questions, how to become the kind of person who earns the right to sit across from greatness. But getting to Larry King was no easier than any of the others. After all, this was a man with a packed schedule and no reason to spend time with a 20-year-old with no media platform. Still, Alex had learned a crucial principle by this point in his journey: when you believe in your mission deeply enough, you will do what others consider irrational. He found out where Larry King ate breakfast every morning: Nate and Al's Deli in Beverly Hills. That was the first key. King had been going there for decades. Same table. Same time. Alex realized this might be his only shot. So he flew to Los Angeles. Now imagine this: a college kid with no formal introduction, sitting at a table across the room, pretending to eat breakfast, all while working up the courage to walk over to Larry King. Day after day, Alex sat there. Watching. Waiting. Doubting. One morning, after multiple failed attempts, he finally stood up, walked over, and introduced himself. What happened next was not magical. Larry King did not offer him an interview right away. He listened. He was polite. He even gave some quick advice. But the real magic was what followed. Instead of walking away forever, Alex came back again. He kept showing up. Not to bother, but to build a relationship. Eventually, Larry began to recognize him. He began to ask questions of his own. Over time, a relationship developed not based on status or need, but on curiosity and respect. And this is the first major lesson of part 3, mentors are not people you extract from. They are people you connect with. Not through begging or pushing, but through patience and presence. In time, Larry King agreed to help Alex. He not only sat for an interview, he coached Alex on how to become a better interviewer himself. He offered specific feedback. He encouraged him to dig deeper, to find his voice, to be real. What makes this story special is how human it is. It is not about a sudden stroke of luck. It is about the uncomfortable, often awkward process of earning someone's trust. Larry King did not see Alex as a project, he saw him as a young man trying to find his path. And that, in many ways, is what a mentor truly is, not someone who gives answers, but someone who believes in your ability to find them. This story offers a real-world truth that applies far beyond the context of interviewing famous people. Think of any industry: tech, education, design, medicine. The most valuable growth often happens not in a classroom, but through conversations with people who have walked the road before you. But mentors are not handed out. You do not get one just because you ask. You earn their time through humility, consistency, and effort. Take, for example, someone starting a business. They might reach out to a successful founder hoping for advice. If that message is vague, something like "Can I pick your brain?" it will probably be ignored. But if they say, "I have read your journey, I admire your approach to hiring, and I am struggling with a similar issue, can I ask one focused question?" that is more likely to get a response. It is not about being perfect. It is about being prepared, respectful, and real. Another example, think of students reaching out to professors or professionals in their field. Those who write thoughtful, specific messages, who follow up with gratitude and curiosity, are the ones who get invited to continue the conversation. Back in Los Angeles, Alex's relationship with Larry King became a turning point. It was not just an interview, it was an apprenticeship. It gave Alex the confidence and the craft he needed to pursue the next chapters of his journey. Larry also taught him something subtle, yet profound: the power of listening. In a world obsessed with talking, real connection begins when we listen not just to words, but to what people truly care about. This insight changed the way Alex approached every conversation going forward. It made him better, not just at interviewing, but at learning. So part 3 of The Third Door is about more than just scoring a win. It is about recognizing that sometimes, success does not come from reaching the top. It comes from sitting at a corner table in a quiet diner, learning from someone who sees a little of their younger self in you. And that more than fame or money is what builds character. The kind of character that opens more doors than you ever imagined. Part 4, The Obstacle Course: Rejection, Silence, and the Inner Game. By this point in his journey, Alex Banayan had already won a sailboat on national television, cold called powerful people, and met one of the most iconic interviewers of all time. It all sounded incredible on the surface. But underneath that excitement was a reality few people talk about: rejection, failure, and long stretches of silence. This part of his journey was not glamorous. It was grueling. Alex had a list of dream interviews: people like Warren Buffett, Bill Gates, and Lady Gaga. He sent emails, made phone calls, knocked on doors, reached out to assistants, agents, managers, and publicists. And for weeks, even months, he heard nothing. Most people believe that rejection is loud, a firm no, or a door slammed shut. But what Alex discovered was that the most painful rejection is actually silence. No reply. No feedback. Just an empty inbox. And it is in the silence that most dreams die. In those quiet days, Alex began to question everything. Was this journey foolish? Was he wasting his time chasing people who would never respond? Was the third door even real? This phase, which he later called the abyss, is something nearly everyone encounters when they step off the default path. Entrepreneurs face it when their first dozen investors say no. Artists feel it when no one shows up to their exhibitions. Writers endure it when their pitches are rejected over and over again. It is the emotional tax of doing something different. One of the most personal stories Alex shares from this period involved his efforts to reach Tim Ferriss, the author of The 4-Hour Workweek. Tim was one of Alex's biggest inspirations, a thinker who had redefined success and productivity for a new generation. Reaching him became an obsession. Alex spent weeks studying everything Tim had ever written or said. He looked for patterns, clues, anything that would help him connect in a meaningful way. He drafted emails for hours, only to delete them. He rewrote subject lines over and over. Finally, he sent one and waited. No reply. He tried again. Then again. Still nothing. It was brutal. But instead of giving up, Alex decided to try something completely different. He crafted a message so thoughtful, so specific, and so clearly researched, that it stood out. Not because it was long, but because it respected Tim's time. It showed real effort. That was the email that finally got a response. And here is a powerful truth from that moment: people at the top do not respond to desperation. They respond to preparation. When someone sees that you have done the work, that you are not just chasing fame but pursuing something meaningful, they are more likely to help. But this breakthrough came only after dozens of attempts. And most of the others on Alex's list never replied at all. He had to learn how to live with rejection. This is where the inner game begins. Most people think success is a matter of intelligence or skill. But Alex discovered that resilience, the ability to keep going when it is hard, is the single most important trait. And resilience is not something you are born with. It is something you train. He began practicing mental techniques. He would reframe rejection not as failure, but as feedback. He would remind himself that every no moved him one step closer to a yes. He read about other entrepreneurs who had faced 100 rejections before finding support. He talked to mentors who reminded him that silence is not a verdict, it is just part of the journey. In fact, one of the most powerful tools he developed was what he called the Rule of 10. For every important goal, he would plan on reaching out 10 times before expecting a result. That way, the first few rejections or no responses would not feel like defeat, they would just be part of the process. This kind of thinking is what separates dreamers from doers. And it is not just about chasing interviews. Think about real-world examples. A software developer might apply to 50 companies before getting a job offer. A public speaker may send dozens of proposals before being invited to an event. A small business owner might get ignored for months before landing their first customer. In all these cases, the third door is not unlocked in one dramatic moment. It is pushed open with persistence. Alex also learned to embrace the importance of small wins. When an assistant responded with a polite decline, he still saw it as progress. When a publicist said maybe, that was a crack in the door. Every tiny step mattered. He stopped looking for shortcuts and started focusing on the long game. And slowly, something shifted. His mindset became stronger. He was no longer just chasing people. He was building a story. A story of grit, determination, and a refusal to quit. This part of the third door reminds us that obstacles are not barriers, they are filters. They test how badly we want it. They separate those who are interested from those who are committed. So if you find yourself in a season of silence, keep going. If your messages go unanswered, keep refining. If the world seems to be ignoring you, do not shrink, show up louder, smarter, and with more heart. Because every rejection, every awkward silence, every ignored email is not the end of the road. It is just a sign that you are walking the right one. And the third door? It is still out there. You just have to be willing to knock again and again until someone finally lets you in. Part 5, Breaking Through, the Power of Bold Moves and Unlikely Allies. After facing wave after wave of silence, rejection, and doubt, Alex Banayan stood at a crucial turning point. He could have easily walked away, like most people do when doors remain shut for too long. But instead, he chose something very few are willing to do. He doubled down on his belief that persistence and creativity would eventually break through. In this part of his journey, we see what happens when preparation meets courage. It is where all the groundwork, all the hours of research, planning, and emotional struggle finally begin to open doors, not because the system changes, but because Alex changed how he approached it. One of the most vivid stories from this chapter of the book is how Alex finally landed a conversation with Elliott Bisnow, the founder of Summit Series. Summit was not just a conference, it was a private gathering of some of the world's most influential entrepreneurs, investors, and creatives. Think of it like a modern-day Davos, but younger, riskier, and much more entrepreneurial in spirit. Alex had heard about Summit and knew that getting into that circle could help him grow his project faster. But again, the challenge was access. These were people who typically responded only to friends, investors, or established connections. Not college students sending cold emails. So Alex tried something different. He decided to fly across the country to show up uninvited at one of the Summit events. He had no ticket. No invitation. No plan. Just a belief that being on the ground gave him a better chance than waiting behind a screen. This was one of his boldest moves. And at first, it seemed ridiculous. He found himself in a hotel lobby, carrying a folder filled with his project notes, unsure of what he would say or do. He felt out of place, overwhelmed, and on the verge of walking away. But then, a small opportunity opened, a conversation here, an introduction there. Slowly, he started meeting people. And eventually, someone introduced him to Elliot Bisnow. What followed was not a formal pitch or a polished presentation. It was a real conversation. A human moment. Elliot did not hand him access to all the interviews Alex wanted, but he gave him something more valuable: guidance. He told Alex something powerful: you have to be so good they cannot ignore you. But until then, keep knocking. Keep showing up. That advice became a guiding principle for Alex. This chapter in his story is full of these pivotal moments where bold action and personal connection outweigh strategy. One of the clearest lessons is that most people underestimate the value of showing up physically. In a digital world where everyone sends emails and pitches over the internet, actually being present face-to-face makes a huge difference. Think about it. How many job applicants stop at an online application? How many entrepreneurs try to land investors without ever attending events where those investors actually go? How many artists try to sell their work through email alone? Being in the room, even when you do not feel ready, is often the most underrated competitive advantage. Another key theme in this part is the role of unlikely allies. Throughout his journey, Alex encountered people who were not at the top of the chain but held the keys to the next step. Assistants, coordinators, interns people often overlooked became the very ones who opened new paths. For example, while trying to reach Warren Buffett, Alex realized that speaking to Buffett's direct office would never work. But if he could get through to someone on the team who understood his mission and trusted his sincerity, he had a shot. This mirrors real-world success stories everywhere. Take Hollywood, for instance. Many actors got their big breaks not from directors or producers, but from assistants who passed along headshots or audition tapes. In startups, early-stage founders often get connected to investors not by cold calls, but through interns or junior associates who believe in their idea. This teaches us a vital truth: never underestimate anyone. You never know who will open the next door. Alex also leaned deeper into authenticity. He stopped trying to impress and started trying to connect. He learned that people respond more when they feel like you truly believe in what you are doing, not when you try to sound smarter or more important. And this is where the real transformation begins. He was no longer just a curious college student on a mission. He had become a young entrepreneur learning to navigate high-stakes relationships, build trust, and think creatively about how to move forward without traditional resources. One of the most powerful quotes from this chapter is when Alex reflects on the moment he realized something crucial: the third door is not something you find. It is something you create. By taking bold risks, by staying grounded in his mission, and by treating every person as someone who mattered, Alex started to carve out his own path, not by waiting for someone to give him permission, but by earning his place at the table. So what does this mean for you? It means that the breakthroughs you are waiting for might not come through the front door. They may not come from a resume or a formal pitch. They may come from a chance meeting, a bold action, or a meaningful conversation that you could never have scripted. It means that even when you are exhausted, showing up matters. That being vulnerable, honest, and prepared often makes more impact than being perfect. And most importantly, it means that success is not just about knocking. It is about finding ways to be unforgettable when the door opens even slightly. Because the third door is not given. It is earned one bold move at a time. Part 6, The Inner Journey, Doubt, Burnout, and Rediscovering Purpose. By now, Alex Banayan had traveled thousands of miles, sent hundreds of emails, and poured his heart into chasing people who were changing the world. He had snuck into exclusive events, made bold cold calls, and even scored interviews with some of the most iconic names in modern history. From Quincy Jones to Larry King, From Tim Ferriss to Steve Wozniak, his journey looked like a dream from the outside. But internally, Alex was unraveling. Behind every photo with a famous figure was a moment of anxiety. Behind every successful meeting was a string of failures, rejections, and crushing self-doubt. In this chapter, the spotlight shifts inward. This is not about strategies or tricks anymore. It is about what happens when your dream starts to feel like a burden, and your passion begins to drain you. Alex was still in his early 20s when it all started to catch up with him. His friends were finishing school, getting jobs, and settling into predictable routines. He, on the other hand, was constantly in motion. There was no salary, no degree to show, no promise that all this effort would ever lead to something solid. The truth was, he was exhausted. There is a moment when you have been chasing something for so long that you forget why you started. Alex hit that wall hard. He had achieved more than most people his age could imagine, but he was lonely. He was broke. He felt like he was constantly proving himself to everyone: his parents, the world, even himself. And the joy that had fueled his journey began to fade. This is a crucial part of every real journey toward success. Burnout does not only happen to people who fail, it often strikes hardest at those who try the hardest. Those who keep going when others stop. Those who say yes when others retreat. And in a world that glorifies hustle, very few people talk about the emotional cost. Alex describes sitting alone in hotel rooms, questioning if it was all worth it. Was chasing Bill Gates and Maya Angelou really going to make a difference? Was this mission still about helping others find their path, or had it become a way to validate his own worth? One night, in particular, became a breaking point. He had just faced another rejection, and it hit him harder than usual. His chest felt tight. He could not sleep. His mind raced with thoughts of quitting, of going back home, of walking away from the whole project. But then something happened. He began to write. Not a pitch, not a strategy memo, just raw, personal reflection. He began journaling honestly, with no filter, and for the first time in a long while, he began to reconnect with why he started all this. It was never about fame. Never about being seen. It was about questions, real, deep questions. How do people find their way when they have nothing to lean on? How do they trust themselves when no one else does? This writing practice became a lifeline. By putting his thoughts on paper, he began to clear the fog. He remembered that his mission was not just to collect stories, but to share them in a way that would help others feel less alone. That clarity gave him strength. In this part of the book, we also see the value of mentorship. During this period of burnout, Alex leaned more into the wisdom of those who had already walked difficult paths. People like Tim Ferriss reminded him that burnout is not a sign of failure. It is a signal. A message from your body and soul that something needs to change. He began to slow down. He stopped chasing every opportunity and focused on depth over speed. He started caring less about how many interviews he could get, and more about how meaningful each conversation truly was. In real-world terms, this is the shift from sprinting to marathon running. Every creative, every entrepreneur, every passionate student eventually has to learn that sustainability matters more than speed. You can only sprint for so long. If you do not pause to breathe, to think, to rest, you will collapse. Burnout does not discriminate. It affects athletes, artists, leaders, and dreamers. It often strikes when you are close to a breakthrough. That is why learning to manage your energy, not just your time, is essential. Another key insight from this chapter is that isolation intensifies burnout. Alex realized that he had built a journey around independence, but he had not built enough community. Once he began to reconnect with friends, share his struggles openly, and lean on his support system, his energy returned. He was still on a difficult path. Nothing had magically resolved. But now, he had a better compass. A clearer why. A deeper sense of what really mattered. In life, we are often told to keep pushing. But sometimes, the strongest thing you can do is to pause, reflect, and recalibrate. Alex's inner transformation reminded him that the journey to success is not just about getting in the room, it is about being whole when you get there. And that begins by listening to yourself, not just your goals. So if you are chasing something big, and you feel tired, uncertain, or even broken, that is not a sign that you are failing. It is a sign that you are human. Like Alex, you may need to take a step back to see forward. Because the third door is not just about hustle. It is also about healing. And healing, too, is part of the way in. Part 7, The Final Door, Lessons from the Journey and the Power of Boldness. After 7 years, countless rejections, incredible interviews, emotional highs, and personal lows, Alex Banayan finally stood at the end of the journey he had once only imagined as a college freshman with a stolen textbook and a restless soul. The mission had begun with one burning question: how do the most successful people in the world launch their careers? Now, he had answers, but more importantly, he had perspective. This final part of the book does not end with fireworks or fame. It ends with clarity. It is about the deeper understanding that success is never as neat, glamorous, or formulaic as it looks from the outside. And yet, it is also more achievable than we think if we are willing to walk through the third door. One of the final and most symbolic moments of Alex's journey was his meeting with Bill Gates. This was the ultimate goal, the interview he had dreamed about for years. Getting to Gates had taken patience, persistence, and luck. But when the moment finally came, it was not just about the interview, it was about who Alex had become to get there. And that is the final lesson: it is not the people you meet or the moments you capture that define you. It is the person you become in the pursuit. What he found most striking about Gates was not his intelligence, though that was undeniable, but his focus. Gates did not try to be everywhere or do everything. He had learned, early in life, to concentrate deeply on the few things that mattered most. That, Alex realized, was a core pattern he had seen again and again. Whether it was Lady Gaga practicing obsessively in underground clubs, or Steve Wozniak building circuit boards in his bedroom, or Tim Ferriss rewriting chapters over and over before publishing, every person he met had developed a kind of tunnel vision. Not blind ambition, but intentional effort. They did not just work hard, they worked smart, with purpose. But perhaps the most powerful discovery of all was that almost none of them had followed a traditional path. The myth of the straight line: go to school, get a degree, work hard, and success will follow, was almost never true in reality. Every icon Alex met had taken detours. They had faced moments of deep uncertainty. Many had started from nothing. What separated them from others was not resources. It was resourcefulness. Take Larry King, for example. Before he was a household name, he was just a kid from Brooklyn with a dream of being on the radio. No one gave him a blueprint. He chased every opportunity. He accepted small roles, odd jobs, anything that brought him closer. Eventually, he got his shot. And when the moment came, he was ready. This is what Alex calls the third door mindset. It is about not waiting in line, not expecting permission, and not being afraid to ask. It is about boldness. Not recklessness, but courageous initiative. Because no one is going to hand you the life you want. You have to build it. This boldness is not limited to entrepreneurs or celebrities. It shows up in everyday people. In the single mother who starts a business from her kitchen table. In the high school student who builds a community project in their town. In the artist who puts their first painting online despite fear of judgment. Every act of boldness creates possibility. Alex realized that the third door is not just for a few. It is open to anyone willing to knock long enough, push hard enough, and believe deeply enough that there is a way in. But this journey also teaches another lesson: success is not the destination. Meaning is. The people Alex interviewed were not just chasing titles or trophies. They were building things that mattered to them. Their success was a byproduct of passion, perseverance, and purpose. For anyone listening to this audiobook from Books Arena, this is the moment where it becomes personal. Ask yourself, what is your third door? What dream have you put on pause because it seemed too far away? Who told you that you were not ready, not good enough, or not connected enough? And most importantly, are you willing to try anyway? Alex Banayan started this journey as a teenager who knew nothing about publishing, interviewing, or entrepreneurship. He had no roadmap. But he had curiosity. He had hustle. And he had the audacity to try. That is what the third door demands. Not perfection. Not genius. But effort. And the belief that you do not have to wait your turn. In the final pages of the book, Alex does not offer a checklist. He offers an invitation. To take the first step. To send the message. To knock on the door. Even if it does not open the first time or the 10th, keep trying. Because somewhere out there, the door is waiting. Not just for someone. For you. And in that spirit, as we close this journey through the third door, remember, success is not reserved. It is earned. Not by luck, but by boldness. Now, the question is no longer is it possible. The question is, are you ready to find your door and walk through it? Let that be your beginning. As we reach the end of the third door, one thing becomes clear: success is not a straight path reserved only for the privileged few. It is a journey filled with uncertainty, setbacks, breakthroughs, and above all, bold action. Alex Banayan's story is a reminder that waiting in line is not the only option. There is always a third door, hidden, difficult, and often intimidating but real. Through interviews with icons like Bill Gates, Larry King, and Lady Gaga, Alex shows us that the most successful people did not follow traditional rules. They made their own. They trusted their instincts, leaned into fear, and kept pushing even when the world told them to stop. So as you walk away from this book, ask yourself, what door are you standing in front of? Are you waiting in line, or are you ready to look for your own third door? Remember, the future does not belong to those who wait. It belongs to those who create, persist, and dare to knock even when the door seems locked. Thank you for joining us on this journey with Books Arena. Keep seeking, keep knocking, and keep believing in your power to find your own way in. We live in a world where everyone is screaming for our attention. Social media, deadlines, expectations, likes, comments, hustle culture. Everywhere you turn, someone is telling you what matters and what you should care about. But what if the real freedom comes from caring less? Not about everything, but about the right things. That's what the subtle art of not giving a fuck is all about. Mark Manson doesn't preach toxic positivity. He's not going to tell you to visualize your dreams or manifest success. Instead, he strips it all down to this brutal, refreshing truth. You only have so many F***ck's to give. So choose wisely. In this summary, we'll explore stories that challenge your beliefs, ideas that hit hard, and uncomfortable truths that could change your life. From embracing failure to redefining happiness, this book is not here to make you feel good. It's here to make you think differently. So let's begin. And remember, you don't have to care about everything. You just have to care about what actually matters. Part 1, Choosing What to Care About. Let me tell you a story. There was a guy named Dave. Dave did everything the world told him to do. He worked long hours, chased titles, bought stuff he didn't need, and checked his phone every 5 minutes to see if people still liked him. On the surface, he looked like a winner. But deep down, Dave was drained. Why? Because Dave gave a about everything. Every rude comment. Every missed opportunity. Every small failure. Every opinion that didn't go his way. And that's where most people go wrong. You see, Mark Manson's book starts with this one big idea. You only have so many S's to give. So don't waste them. Now, that might sound blunt. But it's the truth most of us need to hear. Life is limited. Time is short. Your energy is not infinite. So the question isn't, how do I give more? The real question is, what is actually worth giving a about? Let's look at it this way. Imagine every morning you wake up with 10 coins. Each coin is 1 unit of attention, emotion, energy. Now, if you spend 3 coins worrying about what strangers think of your post, 2 coins on whether your coworker sounded rude, and 4 coins stressing over something that happened 3 years ago, what's left for the things that truly matter? Your relationships? Your growth? Your peace? Nothing. And that's exactly what happens when you try to care about everything. You run out of energy for what's meaningful. Manson introduces this with an unexpected example: Charles Bukowski. Bukowski was an alcoholic, a gambler, and a self-described loser. But eventually, he became a famous writer. Not because he believed in himself, but because he stopped pretending to care about being liked. On his tombstone, the words are simple. Don't try. That's not laziness. That's honesty. Bukowski didn't fake optimism. He didn't chase admiration. He just did his thing raw, real, flawed. And people connected with it. That's the heart of this book. Not giving up on life, but giving up on performing for it. Let's go back to Dave. When he read this part of the book, something clicked. He realized he was investing all his emotional energy into things he couldn't control: people's reactions, society's expectations, random drama online. Every like, every swipe, every new thing to chase was just noise. So he asked himself a powerful question. What do I truly want to care about? That question changed everything. He started spending less time on social media and more time reading. He quit chasing status and started building meaningful work. He stopped saying yes to everything and began choosing his time. Was it easy? No. But it was freeing. Manson isn't telling you to be careless. He's saying the opposite. He's telling you to care deeply, but only about the things that are worth it. Here's what that looks like. Caring less about being popular. Caring more about being honest. Caring less about looking perfect. Caring more about showing up real. Caring less about being right. Caring more about learning. That's what maturity is. That's what self-respect looks like. You see, we live in a culture that tells you to never settle, always hustle, never quit, and always believe in yourself. But Manson calls that out. Sometimes the bravest thing you can do is say, "This doesn't matter to me. I don't need to win this. I'm okay with being ordinary." Not because you've failed, but because you've chosen a better use of your limited life. That's real freedom. Let's wrap this part with a final image. Imagine your mind is like a garden. If you try to grow everything: roses, weeds, tomatoes, dandelions, and palm trees all in one place, you get chaos. Nothing thrives. But if you choose carefully, pull the weeds, water only what you want to grow, you get beauty. You get fruit. You get peace. That's what this book is showing us. You don't need to give more. You need to give better. Part 2, Taking Responsibility for Your Life. Let's begin with a simple story. A man wakes up late for work. His alarm didn't go off. He spills coffee on his shirt, gets stuck in traffic, and finally arrives an hour behind schedule. Frustrated, he blames his alarm, the barista, the traffic lights, everything and everyone but himself. Sound familiar? Most people go through life like that, reacting, blaming, avoiding. But Mark Manson draws a sharp line between fault and responsibility. You are always responsible for how you respond, no matter who caused the problem. That's the uncomfortable truth. And also the most empowering one. Let's take another example: Sarah. Sarah's childhood was rough. Her father left when she was young. Her mother worked multiple jobs. She struggled with self-worth for years and felt like life had handed her a bad deck of cards. When she first heard this idea that she was responsible for her own healing, her own mindset, she resisted. It's not fair, she thought. I didn't ask for this. And she was right. It wasn't fair. But Manson's message isn't about fairness. It's about power. Yes, Sarah wasn't to blame for her pain. But if she wanted to move forward, she had to take responsibility for her response. So she did. She started therapy. She joined a support group. She journaled every morning, not to relieve the past, but to reframe it. Slowly, her story began to shift. Not from victim to hero, but from powerless to self-led. Manson challenges us to stop pointing fingers. Because when you blame your job, your ex, your childhood, or even your country, you're giving your power away. You're saying, I'm stuck because of something out there. But growth doesn't happen out there. It begins within. It's easy to blame. It's harder and braver to own your part in the story. That's what real responsibility is. Not controlling the world, but choosing your response every single day. Let's bring in another story, the famous one of Viktor Frankl. Frankl was a Holocaust survivor, a psychiatrist, and the author of Man's Search for Meaning. While imprisoned in Nazi concentration camps, he lost his family, his home, and almost his life. But there was one thing they couldn't take from him. The last of the human freedoms to choose one's attitude in any given set of circumstances. Even in the worst imaginable conditions, Frankl discovered a truth that echoes Manson's message. We may not control what happens to us, but we always control what we make of it. This doesn't mean you take responsibility for everything that happens. It means you take responsibility for how you carry it. You didn't choose the pain, but you choose whether it defines you. You didn't choose the betrayal, but you choose whether it hardens your heart. You didn't choose the setback, but you choose what you do next. That's the shift from being reactive to being responsible. Mark Manson gives us a tool for this mindset shift. He calls it the feedback loop from hell. It's when you feel bad. Then feel bad about feeling bad. Then get anxious because you're anxious. And round you go. Taking responsibility breaks the loop. Instead of thinking, I shouldn't feel this way, you say, I feel this way and I own it. That small change turns chaos into clarity. Here's another insight from Manson. We don't always control what happens. But we always control what it means. So when life throws something painful your way, don't ask, why me? Ask, what can I learn from this? What's my next move? How can this experience shape me, not shatter me? That's not toxic positivity. That's courageous ownership. Let's return to Sarah. 1 year after beginning her healing journey, she wasn't perfect. But she was empowered. Not because everything had magically improved, but because she had. She stopped waiting for life to fix itself. She stopped blaming her past for her future. She started making decisions that aligned with who she wanted to be. That's what responsibility looks like. It's quiet. It's powerful. And it's something no one can take away from you. To summarize, fault is about the past. Responsibility is about the present. Blame keeps you stuck. Ownership moves you forward. Life isn't fair, but you still get to choose how you live it. Manson doesn't sugarcoat anything. But that's the beauty of this book. It doesn't promise easy answers. It offers something better: the truth. Part 3, the value of failure. Failure. The word itself makes most people cringe. From a young age, we're told that failure is something to avoid. That it means you weren't smart enough, strong enough, talented enough. That it's something to be ashamed of. But what if that's completely backward? What if failure isn't the end of the road, but the only way to get where you're meant to go? Mark Manson argues that failure isn't just part of life. It's the path to a better one. Let's start with a story. There was a young man who wanted to be a rock star. He dropped out of college, moved to LA, and started a band. He poured his heart into his music, writing lyrics, playing shows, scraping by. After years of hard work, his band was signed to a record label. But just before they were about to take off, he was kicked out. The record label didn't think he fit the image. Crushed, broke, and angry, the young man spiraled into depression. He thought his dream was over. His friends told him to quit. But he kept writing music anyway. Years later, that same man started another band. You might have heard of them, Megadeth. The man was Dave Mustaine, and despite the crushing rejection, he built one of the most successful heavy metal bands in history, selling over 25 million albums. And yet, in interviews, Dave admitted something shocking. He still saw himself as a failure. Why? Because he was kicked out of Metallica, the band he helped form, and who went on to become one of the most legendary bands of all time. Here's the twist: even though Dave built incredible success, he still measured himself by the wrong metric. He was winning but comparing it to someone else's scoreboard. Manson uses this story to teach a vital lesson. The key isn't just learning from failure. It's learning to measure it correctly. Let's look at another example: Pete Best. Pete was the original drummer of the Beatles. Yes, the Beatles. But just before the band hit it big, he was replaced by Ringo Starr. While Dave Mustaine became wildly successful and still felt like a failure, Pete Best ended up living a quiet, happy life. In later interviews, Pete said, "I'm happier than I would have been with the Beatles." It sounds strange, but Pete didn't measure his life by fame or money. He measured it by peace, family, and fulfillment. 2 men. 2 rejections. Same setback, completely different outcomes, all because of how they chose to define success. Failure is not just about what happens. It's about what you make of it. Manson says, we're all going to fail. The question is, will you fail smart? Think about your own life. What was your biggest failure? A breakup? A missed opportunity? A job you didn't get? Now ask yourself, what did it teach you? What did it make you reevaluate? How did it shape who you are today? Sometimes, the greatest breakthroughs come from the worst breakdowns. Let's take another real story: Thomas Edison. When asked about his many failed attempts at inventing the light bulb, Edison famously said, "I have not failed. I've just found 10,000 ways that won't work. He didn't avoid failure. He studied it. He used it. And eventually, he lit the world. Manson also warns us about chasing success without understanding our values. He talks about people who say they want to be rich or famous but never ask why. So they keep trying and failing, not because they're not good enough, but because their goals are empty. When you chase shallow success, failure feels fatal. But when you chase something meaningful, learning, growth, connection, failure becomes just another step forward. That's the difference. Failure also reveals who you really are. Anyone can look confident when things are going well. But how do you respond when you're knocked down? Do you give up? Do you blame the world? Or do you take the hit and try again, smarter, stronger, and more honest? Manson says true confidence doesn't come from avoiding failure. It comes from being okay with it. From knowing that even when you fall, you're still enough. Let's return to the man in our opening story, Dave Mustaine. Yes, he carried pain from the past. But he also created something incredible out of rejection. And Pete Best? He turned a world-shaking loss into a quiet, joyful life. They both failed, but only one of them let it define his happiness. To wrap up, failure is not the enemy. It's your teacher. What matters isn't the setback, it's the metric you use to measure it. Choose values that are in your control. Redefine success in your own terms. You don't have to fear failure. You just have to fail with purpose. And then, get back up. Part 4, Embracing Uncertainty and Self-Awareness. Let's begin with a confession. We all think we know ourselves. We believe we know what we want, what we believe, and what's right for us. But here's the truth Mark Manson drops, and it hits hard. We don't know ourselves nearly as well as we think we do. And most of the time, the things we're absolutely sure about, turn out to be wrong. Let's explore this through a story. Imagine a man named Raj. Raj is the kind of guy who always has an answer. Confident, outspoken, never hesitates. For years, he believed success meant being certain about goals, opinions, beliefs, and values. But one day, something shifted. He got passed over for a promotion he was sure he'd get. His longtime partner ended their relationship, saying, "You never really listen." And his friends began pulling away. Confused, Raj started reflecting. For the first time, he asked himself questions he'd never considered. What if I don't know everything? What if being right all the time is hurting me? What if certainty is actually the thing holding me back? That moment of doubt, uncomfortable as it was, became the beginning of real self-awareness. Manson puts it simply. The desire for certainty is the enemy of growth. When we cling to being right, we shut the door to learning. When we're afraid of being wrong, we resist change. And worst of all, we build a false image of ourselves, a mask that says, "I've got it all figured out," even when we're breaking inside. Here's a thought experiment Manson shares. Ask yourself, what if everything I believe is wrong? It's not about doubting everything to the point of paralysis. It's about making room for humility. When you admit, "I could be wrong," you become open. Open to feedback. Open to different perspectives. Open to growth. Let's look at history. Galileo challenged the belief that the sun revolved around the earth. People were so certain he was wrong they imprisoned him. Centuries later, we laugh at how confident they were in their mistake. So now ask yourself, what are you absolutely certain about, that might be wrong? Manson shares that certainty is an emotional crutch. People cling to it not because it's true, but because it feels safe. We think, if I'm certain my partner is the one, I'll never be hurt. If I'm sure this career is right, I'll never fail. If I know I'm a good person, I won't need to question my actions. But that's not strength, that's fear in disguise. Real strength is saying, "I'm not sure. But I'm willing to find out." Let's go back to Raj. He started journaling. Not just about events, but about how he reacted to them. Why did he get angry during meetings? Why did criticism feel like an attack? Why did silence in a conversation make him nervous? He didn't always find clear answers. But asking the questions made him more honest. And that's the gift of uncertainty. It pushes you to explore yourself, not just explain yourself. Manson also talks about the value of being wrong. Think about the times you grew most in life. Chances are, They followed moments of deep discomfort, maybe even embarrassment. Like realizing you were wrong about a friend. Or misjudging your own abilities. Or chasing a dream that wasn't really yours. Those moments sting. But they also wake us up. Manson writes. Being wrong opens us up to the possibility of change. Being wrong brings the opportunity for growth. So how do you develop this kind of self-awareness? Manson gives us a few clues. Ask better questions. Instead of "why is this happening to me?" ask, "what part did I play in this?" Notice your emotional triggers. When something makes you overreact, dig into it. There's always a deeper reason. Be skeptical of your own thoughts. Just because you feel something strongly doesn't mean it's true. Surround yourself with people who challenge you. Not critics, but people who care enough to tell you when you're off track. Now here's a metaphor Manson uses. Our beliefs are like lenses through which we see the world. But sometimes, the lenses are dirty and we don't even realize it. Self-awareness means cleaning the lens. It means stepping back and asking, is the problem the world? Or how I'm seeing it? Let's wrap this up. Uncertainty is not a flaw. It's a feature of being human. The most dangerous people are those who are 100% sure of everything. And the most peaceful people? They're the ones who've made peace with not knowing. So, don't chase certainty. Chase clarity. Chase honesty. Chase awareness. Because when you know you could be wrong, you're finally ready to get it right. Part 5, The Power of Saying No and Setting Boundaries. Let's begin with a simple idea. Every time you say yes to something, you're also saying no to something else. Yes to overtime. That's no to dinner with family. Yes to someone else's demands. That's no to your own priorities. Yes to always being available. That's no to peace and space. And here's the hard truth Mark Manson delivers. If you want to live a good life, you have to say no. A lot. But many of us struggle to say no. Why? Because we fear rejection. We want to be liked. We don't want conflict. But in trying to please everyone, we often end up pleasing no one, especially not ourselves. Let's dive into a story. Meet Anjali. She's the dependable one, the one who always shows up, always says yes. Need help moving? Ask Anjali. Need a last-minute favor? She'll drop everything. But something started to crack. Anjali felt constantly tired, emotionally drained, and quietly resentful. She started snapping at people she cared about. Her health declined, her sleep was broken, and her creativity disappeared. One night, she journaled just 2 words, "I'm exhausted." And for the first time, she asked herself, what am I giving away in order to be liked? Manson explains that many of us avoid saying no because we think it's rude or selfish. But actually, saying no is one of the most honest things you can do. Why? Because every meaningful relationship, whether romantic, professional, or personal, requires boundaries. Without boundaries, people walk over you. Not always out of malice, but because you haven't shown them where the line is. Boundaries say, this is what I'm okay with. This is what I'm not okay with. Here's how you can respect me. Let's take another example. Imagine 2 friends, Arjun and Rakesh. Arjun is easygoing, always agreeable, rarely confronts anyone. At first, everyone loves being around him. But over time, people notice something strange. Arjun gets passive-aggressive. He cancels plans last minute. He says he's fine, but he's not. Then there's Rakesh. He's kind, but clear. If he can't do something, he says so. If something bothers him, he talks about it. He doesn't sugarcoat, but he also doesn't bottle things up. Who do you think people respect more? Rakesh. Every time. Because clear boundaries build trust. People know where they stand. There's no guessing, no games. Manson writes. Freedom through commitment comes from choosing what to care about and rejecting the rest. You can't be everything to everyone. You shouldn't be. Trying to say yes to everything dilutes your energy, your identity, and your purpose. Saying no allows you to say yes to the right things. Now, let's talk relationships. Manson says that the most toxic relationships aren't just the ones full of fighting. They're the ones where boundaries are missing. Imagine someone who constantly invades your space. They demand your time, ignore your needs, and guilt trip you when you say no. Or maybe you've been that person fearing abandonment, clinging too tightly, overstepping without realizing it. Without boundaries, love turns into control. Friendship becomes obligation. Work becomes slavery. But what if you set a boundary, and someone walks away? Manson's response is simple. Good. Let them. Because anyone who disappears when you start valuing yourself was never really for you. Boundaries don't push people away. They filter them. They reveal who respects you and who only respects what you can give them. Back to Anjali. She started small. She said no to a weekend she didn't want to commit to. She turned down a request that drained her. She asked for space when she needed it. The results weren't instant, but they were powerful. Some people pulled away. But others leaned in more respectful, more understanding. And Anjali? She felt lighter, more grounded. Like she was finally building a life for herself, not just for others. So how do you build stronger boundaries? Manson gives a few steps. Know your values. If you don't know what matters most, you won't know what to say no to. Be direct. Don't over-explain. A simple, honest "I can't" is enough. Accept discomfort. Saying no may feel awkward. That's okay. Discomfort is not danger. Be consistent. Boundaries are not one-time events. They're habits. Here's a metaphor. Think of your life as a house. Boundaries are the walls, the doors, the locks. They're not there to trap anyone, they're there to protect what's inside. You decide who enters, how long they stay, and how they treat your space. Without walls, your house gets trampled. With clear boundaries, you build a home. So let's sum up. Saying no is not selfish, it's essential. Boundaries don't hurt relationships, they make them real. You teach people how to treat you by what you allow. When you start valuing your time and energy, others will too. It's not about giving fewer cares. It's about giving them to the right things. And sometimes, the most powerful word you'll ever say is no. Part 6, Responsibility, Blame, and Taking Ownership. Let's begin with a simple idea that Mark Manson drills deep into. You are always responsible for your experiences, even when they're not your fault. At first, that might sound unfair. Even a little cold. But let's unpack it, because this idea can completely shift how you see your life. Imagine a young man named Neeraj. Neeraj had a rough start. His parents fought constantly. He was bullied in school. He got passed over for jobs he felt he deserved. At every turn, life seemed stacked against him. For a long time, he held on to one belief. None of this is my fault. And he was right. It wasn't his fault. But here's the turning point: Neeraj realized something else. It was his responsibility to choose what to do next. He couldn't go back and change the past. But he could change how he responded to it, what he learned from it, and what kind of person he decided to become. That was his power. Manson makes a bold but crucial distinction. Fault is in the past. Responsibility is in the present. You might not have caused the problem. But you are responsible for how you deal with it. Let's take an example. Say someone crashes into your car. It's clearly their fault. But now you have a choice. Stay angry, blame them forever, and let that frustration eat at your day. Or take responsibility for the next step: getting the car repaired, sorting the paperwork, and moving forward. The accident is not your fault. But the aftermath is now your responsibility. Now let's go deeper. Manson shares that people often confuse responsibility with guilt or blame. They think, if I'm responsible, then I must have caused this. If I'm responsible, it means I'm the bad guy. But that's not true. Responsibility isn't about taking the blame. It's about taking control. It means saying, I didn't choose the situation, but I choose how I respond to it. That's real power. Here's another story. Meet Mira. Mira's father walked out when she was a child. She spent years angry, blaming him for the loneliness, the anxiety, the insecurities that followed her into adulthood. But one day, during a therapy session, something clicked. The therapist asked, how long will you let a man who left you continue to control your life? That question hit her like lightning. She realized she had no power over what he did. But she had full power over what she did next. She started healing. Not because he came back and said sorry, but because she took ownership of her own emotions. Manson writes, "Responsibility is not about fault. It's about power. When we blame others, we give them control over our happiness. When we take responsibility, we take that control back. Even in pain, even in unfairness, we find a path forward." Let's bring in a historical example. Nelson Mandela spent 27 years in prison unjustly. He could have emerged bitter, seeking revenge. Instead, he took responsibility for his country's healing. He chose reconciliation, peace, unity. That's not weakness. That's leadership. That's the kind of power Manson talks about, the power of emotional ownership. Here's how you can apply this mindset. Separate fault from responsibility. It's okay to admit something wasn't your fault, but don't stop there. Ask, what can I do now? Ask better questions. Not why did this happen to me? But what can I learn from this, or what does this make possible? Stop waiting for apologies. You don't need closure from someone else to move forward. You can give it to yourself. Choose response over reaction. Take a pause. Reflect. Then act in a way your future self will respect. Think of it like this. Your life is a story. Some chapters were written by others, your childhood, your circumstances, your traumas. But you hold the pen now. What kind of story will you write from here? Blame keeps you stuck in the past. Responsibility lets you build the future. One of Manson's core messages is this. You don't always control what happens. But you always control the meaning you assign to it. Two people can experience the same hardship, one grows stronger, the other falls apart. The difference is mindset. Ownership. Willingness to act. Let's return to Neeraj. He didn't suddenly become successful overnight. But once he took ownership of his choices, his energy changed. He stopped waiting to be rescued. He stopped comparing. He started focusing on what he could control. And slowly, his life started changing, not because the world got easier, but because he got stronger. So let's summarize. Responsibility is not about blaming yourself. It's about empowering yourself. You might not have chosen the pain, but you get to choose the path. The most powerful people aren't the ones who avoid problems. They're the ones who own them. In a world full of blame, take the road of ownership. That's where growth lives. Part 7, Death and the Final Freedom. There's one truth we all share, no matter our background, beliefs, or status. We are all going to die. It's not a comfortable topic. Most people avoid thinking about it. But in this final chapter, Mark Manson argues that facing death, truly staring it in the eye, is the most powerful thing we can do. Because when you realize your time is limited, you stop wasting it on things that don't matter. Let's begin with a true story. There was a man named Charles Bukowski, a rough and honest poet who lived on the edge. When he died, his gravestone didn't have some elegant poem or deep quote. It simply said, "Don't try." Strange, right? But Manson explains Bukowski wasn't telling us to be lazy. He was saying, don't fake it. Don't pretend. Don't try to be something you're not. Just be real. And death forces us into that kind of honesty. Imagine this. You're walking through your life, busy, stressed, comparing yourself to others, chasing things that feel urgent but not important. Then one day, you're told you only have 6 months left to live. Suddenly, everything shifts. You no longer care about how many followers you have. You don't worry about what strangers think of you. You stop tolerating fake friends and empty goals. You focus on what really matters. This is the clarity that death brings. And the surprising gift it holds. Manson tells the story of a friend named Josh. Josh was in his 20s, full of life, when he was diagnosed with cancer. The news shattered everything. But as he processed it, something strange happened. He became calm, focused, free. He stopped caring about petty arguments. He called his parents more. He forgave people. He laughed harder. He cried freely. He lived deeply. Then, miraculously, the cancer went into remission. He survived. But the experience changed him forever. Because once you face the end, you stop giving your time, energy, and heart to things that don't deserve it. Death, Manson says, is not the end. It's the motivator. It reminds us that life is too short to care about everything. Too short to seek approval. Too short to chase shallow goals. When you accept death, you learn how to live. Think of a man on his deathbed. He's not thinking about how many likes his last post got. He's not worried about whether he impressed his boss. He's thinking about, did I love fully? Did I forgive? Did I spend my time on what mattered? Was I true to myself? This awareness is what Manson calls the final freedom. When you accept that everything is temporary, you stop clinging. When you accept that nothing lasts, you start paying attention. And when you stop fearing death, you stop fearing life. Let's bring in another example. Steve Jobs, the visionary behind Apple, once said, "Remembering that I'll be dead soon is the most important tool I've ever encountered to help me make big choices in life." He knew that death strips away all pride, all fear, all ego. And when that's gone, what's left is clarity. Manson writes, "You are going to die someday. And that's because you are fortunate enough to have lived. So don't run from this truth. Let it guide you. Let it remind you that every argument is a moment you'll never get back. Every wasted day is a gift you didn't open. Every passion ignored is a chapter you didn't write." Here's something you can do today: a little mental exercise. Imagine your own funeral. Who's there? What do you want them to say about you? What kind of legacy do you hope to leave? Now work backward from that. Build your life in a way that matches your answers. Live the kind of story you want people to remember. Not one based on fear or comparison, but one rooted in purpose, love, and truth. So what does this have to do with not giving a dash? Everything. Because when you remember your time is limited, you become intentional. You start giving your energy to what actually matters. Deep relationships. Meaningful work. Peace of mind. Growth, contribution, love. And you stop giving it to things that don't. Status. Drama. Perfectionism. Fear of judgment. One final story. There's an old parable about a traveler who asks a wise monk, "Master, what is the meaning of life?" The monk simply points to a small flower growing in the sun. The traveler doesn't understand. But over time, he realizes the flower is fragile, short-lived, and yet, beautiful. That's what life is. Brief. Delicate. But precious. The point isn't to chase everything. The point is to love what matters while you still can. Let's sum up this final lesson. Death is not the enemy. Wasting your life is. The awareness of death brings the gift of clarity. Let it sharpen your priorities and soften your heart. Stop trying to care about everything. Start living with intention. Give your time only to what truly deserves it. Because when you stop fearing the end, you finally learn how to begin. And that brings us to the end of The Subtle Art of Not Giving a by Mark Manson. This book isn't about caring less. It's about caring more, about the right things. It's about letting go of chasing perfection, applause, and approval and instead focusing on what actually matters to you. Whether it's owning your responsibility, accepting failure, embracing discomfort, or staring death in the face, Manson shows us that true strength comes not from avoiding pain, but from finding meaning through it. So as you go forward, ask yourself, what are you giving your energy to? Is it helping you grow or just keeping you busy? Are you choosing your values or are they being chosen for you? Because you only have so many to give. Use them wisely. If this summary helped you, leave a comment and let me know what hit home the most. And if you're ready to explore more life-changing ideas, don't forget to subscribe to Books Arena. I'll be back soon with another book that could change the way you see the world. Until then, take care, give less to the noise, and more to what truly matters. Welcome to Books Arena. Money is one of the most important tools in life, yet so many of us struggle to manage it. The Richest Man in Babylon, by George S. Clason, does not promise instant wealth or get-rich-quick schemes. Instead, it teaches timeless principles about saving, investing, and building prosperity, framed through stories set in the ancient city of Babylon, a city famous for its wealth and wisdom. Through simple parables, we learn how ordinary people in Babylon achieved extraordinary financial success. The lessons revolve around common sense practices, living within your means, making your money work for you, seeking wise counsel, and taking action consistently. These are principles as relevant today as they were thousands of years ago. By understanding and applying these timeless truths, you can take control of your financial future. You will see how small, disciplined actions can lead to lasting wealth, and how the mindset of a prosperous person begins with personal responsibility and wise choices. Today, we will explore these lessons, story by story, and uncover how the wisdom of ancient Babylon can transform your approach to money, work, and life itself. Part 1. Start thy purse to fattening. In the ancient city of Babylon, there lived a man named Arcad, who would become known as the richest man in all the city. What set him apart was not luck, inheritance, or extraordinary skill, but a principle so simple, yet so powerful, that it remains true even today. He started by saving a portion of everything he earned. Arcad often told the people of Babylon that no matter how much one earns, if nothing is saved, wealth will never come. He preached the idea of paying yourself first. For every coin earned, a small portion should be set aside before any spending occurs, even before buying food or paying debts. By doing this, the seeds of wealth are planted early, and over time, they grow. At first, the citizens were skeptical. How could someone set aside money when expenses seemed endless? But Arcad insisted that saving is not about having extra after spending, it is about creating discipline and a foundation. He would say, a part of all you earn is yours to keep. Even if it is just a tenth, it is the start. The principle is simple: if you do not save, you cannot accumulate. But saving alone is not enough. Arcad also taught that saved money must be put to work. Let your coins multiply, whether through trade, investment, or lending to those who can use them wisely. Idle money does not grow. Money, like fertile soil, must be nurtured. Arcad illustrated his teaching through a story of a young man who came to him lamenting that despite working hard, he had nothing to show for it. Arcad asked him a question: do you spend all you earn, or do you save a portion first? The young man admitted he spent everything. Arcad explained that wealth is created not by what you earn, but by what you save and invest wisely. The beauty of this lesson is its universality. Consider modern examples: a young professional who saves 10% of every paycheck, or a small business owner who reinvests profits rather than spending on luxuries will, over time, build financial security. The principle does not rely on luck or special talent. It relies on discipline. Arcad also highlighted a subtle but important point: saving must be done consistently. One coin saved today and another tomorrow, steadily, compounds into substantial wealth over time. The power of small, repeated actions cannot be overstated. It is the rhythm of saving that transforms ordinary earnings into extraordinary fortune. This principle goes beyond money. It is about building a habit of foresight and responsibility. By dedicating a portion of income to the future, individuals develop patience, planning, and the ability to delay gratification, qualities that serve every aspect of life. Finally, Arcad emphasized mindset. Many think wealth is for the lucky, or for those born into it. He argued otherwise: wealth is a result of action, not chance. By taking control of even a small portion of earnings and applying it wisely, anyone can build prosperity. Start your purse to fattening. Begin today, however modestly. Save a portion of your earnings, put it to work, and let it grow. The richest man in Babylon did not become wealthy by accident. He started by taking small, deliberate steps that anyone could take, and over time, those steps became the foundation of his enduring fortune. Part 2. Control thy expenditures. After Arcad taught the importance of saving, the next lesson in wealth was equally critical: controlling one's expenditures. In Babylon, as in life today, people often earn enough but still find themselves struggling because they spend without thought, letting desires dictate their actions. Arcad explained that wealth is not just about how much you earn, but how wisely you manage it. He often reminded the citizens that desires are endless. Clothes, feasts, jewelry, houses, and pleasures all pull at one's purse. Without restraint, these desires consume all earnings, leaving nothing for saving or investing. The wealthy do not live without pleasures, but they ensure that their spending does not exceed a planned limit. Arcad illustrated this through the story of Bansur, the chariot builder, and Kabai, the musician, both of whom struggled despite working hard every day. They lamented that money seemed to vanish as quickly as it came. Arcad asked them to list their expenses and compare them to their earnings. They were surprised to discover that most of their coins were spent on wants rather than necessities or savings. This clarity was the first step toward financial freedom. The principle here is simple: make a budget for your necessities, your future, and then decide how much you can spend on other desires. Do not allow your wants to dictate your life. If you earn 10 coins, do not plan to spend all 10. Decide what portion is necessary, what portion you save, and what portion is for enjoyment, and stick to it. This lesson is timeless. Modern examples abound. Families who live paycheck to paycheck often struggle not because they earn too little, but because they fail to prioritize needs over wants. By creating boundaries for spending and distinguishing between essentials and luxuries, anyone can free up money for saving and investing. Arcad emphasized that controlling expenditures is not about living miserably. It is about being intentional. One can enjoy life's pleasures, but without a plan, those pleasures can become a trap. The key is discipline, spending consciously, rather than being led by impulse or desire. He also stressed the importance of distinguishing between necessary expenses and desires that seem urgent but are not essential. A fancy feast, expensive clothing, or luxury items may bring temporary pleasure, but they do not build wealth. Instead, redirect a portion of those coins into savings or investments. Over time, this careful management multiplies far beyond what impulsive spending could ever achieve. Bansir and Kabai learned that controlling their expenditures allowed them to free a portion of their earnings for investment. This small change shifted their path from mere survival to gradual accumulation of wealth. They realized that money left unguarded slips away as quickly as water through fingers, but money managed wisely grows steadily and reliably. Ultimately, this lesson goes beyond finance. It teaches self-control, foresight, and discipline, qualities that shape every aspect of a person's life. Controlling expenditures is not just about coins, it is about mastery over choices, habits, and priorities. Arcad's wisdom was clear: save first, then spend wisely. Distinguish between needs and wants. Plan your spending. Avoid the trap of lifestyle inflation, where desires expand to consume every coin earned. By mastering these practices, the citizens of Babylon were able to accumulate wealth steadily, turning ordinary earnings into extraordinary security and freedom. Part 3, Make Thy Gold Multiply. Once Arcad had taught the people of Babylon to save a portion of their earnings and control their spending, he introduced the next crucial principle: make your gold work for you. Saving alone is not enough, money must be put to work, generating more money, or it will remain stagnant. Arcad told the story of a man named Algamish, a wise money lender, who guided his clients to invest their coins wisely. One young man had saved 10 coins but was unsure how to make them grow. Algamish explained that money is like a fertile seed. If buried and left untouched, it produces nothing. But if nurtured and invested in ventures that are prudent and reliable, it can multiply over time, yielding returns far beyond the original sum. The principle is straightforward: every coin you save should be employed to earn more. It could be through lending to trustworthy individuals, investing in trade, or participating in ventures where risk is calculated and wisdom guides decisions. The key is action, letting money do the work instead of hoarding it passively. Arcad warned against impulsive or reckless investment. He recounted the story of a man who gambled his savings on speculative ventures without knowledge or counsel, only to lose everything. This caution underscores that multiplying wealth requires intelligence, patience, and guidance. Seek counsel from those experienced and reliable, and avoid schemes that promise quick riches with high risk. In practical terms, making your gold multiply is about thinking long-term. Consider the power of compounding. A coin invested wisely today can grow steadily over months and years. The habit of consistently investing small amounts builds wealth far more effectively than sporadic, high-risk ventures. This principle also teaches the importance of opportunity. Just as fertile land produces crops when sown, your savings can only grow when placed where it has the chance to work. Idle money in a drawer, no matter how large, contributes nothing to your prosperity. Money must move, guided by prudence, to create abundance. Arcad often reminded the citizens of Babylon that multiplying wealth requires courage alongside wisdom. It takes bravery to step beyond simply saving and begin investing, trusting that thoughtful decisions and patience will yield results. Those who hesitated too long risk stagnation, allowing their coins to lie dormant while others grew rich. This lesson resonates today. Individuals who invest a portion of their income, whether in businesses, stocks, or other ventures, consistently build wealth over time. Those who fail to act, letting fear or indecision dominate, often find themselves trapped in a cycle of earning and spending without growth. The story of Babylon teaches that financial growth is intentional. It is not accidental. Every coin saved and invested wisely is a seed planted for future security and prosperity. Over time, even modest amounts, managed intelligently, create financial independence and the ability to seize new opportunities. In essence, making your gold multiply is about transforming passive savings into active wealth creation. It is about foresight, wisdom, and the courage to act. When combined with the earlier principles of saving and controlling expenditures, this step completes the foundation for lasting financial success, turning disciplined habits into a life of abundance. Part 4. Guard thy treasures from loss. As Arcad continued to teach the citizens of Babylon, he emphasized a principle that is as important as saving and multiplying wealth: protecting what you already have. It is not enough to earn and invest, one must also guard their treasures against loss, carelessness, and unwise ventures. Arcad told the story of Rotten, a successful merchant who had accumulated a modest fortune. Excited by his earnings, Rotten sought to invest in a risky trade with strangers he barely knew, tempted by promises of extraordinary returns. The venture failed, and he lost much of his hard-earned wealth. The lesson was clear: wealth can vanish quickly when placed in untrusted hands or speculative schemes without due diligence. In Babylon, the wise followed a simple rule: never invest in anything you do not understand, and never entrust your money to those whose judgment you cannot rely upon. Even the most promising opportunity carries risk when guided by ignorance or carelessness. Prudence, research, and seeking counsel from those experienced in financial matters are essential. Arcad explained that guarding wealth requires both caution and wisdom. It is about balancing ambition with judgment. The desire to grow wealth is natural and beneficial, but it must not blind one to the risks. Think of a farmer planting seeds: you choose fertile soil, water carefully, and protect the crop from pests. Similarly, your money must be nurtured in environments where growth is possible and loss is minimized. This principle extends beyond mere finances. Protecting your treasures also means safeguarding your reputation, your skills, and your relationships, the assets that underpin your ability to earn and invest. Wealth can be rebuilt, but trust, credibility, and opportunity, once lost, are much harder to recover. Arcad also emphasized that guarding your treasures does not mean avoiding risk entirely. Risk is inevitable in any endeavor. But risk without preparation, without understanding, and without caution is not calculated, it is recklessness. The wise take informed risks, ensuring that each venture has a reasonable chance of success, and that losses, if they occur, will not destroy the foundation of their financial security. A practical lesson for modern life is clear: do not chase get-rich-quick schemes or speculative investments without proper knowledge. Vet your advisors and verify their credibility. Diversify your investments to protect against unexpected setbacks. Always consider what could go wrong and prepare for it. The wealth you have worked hard to earn deserves protection just as much as it deserves growth. Arcad's teaching here was simple: wealth is a treasure, but it is also fragile. Protect it as you would a precious gem. Avoid foolish ventures, seek advice from those who are experienced, and ensure that your savings and investments remain secure. By doing so, you create a foundation that can withstand the tests of time, market fluctuations, and human error. Ultimately, guarding your treasures allows you to preserve the fruits of your labor, ensuring that your efforts in saving and investing continue to benefit you and your family. Wealth unprotected is like a river left unchecked; it can slip away in an instant. Wisdom ensures it flows steadily, building prosperity over a lifetime. Part 5. Make of thy dwelling a profitable investment. Arcad's lessons on wealth extended beyond coins and investments to the very roof over one's head. In Babylon, many people rented or lived in poorly constructed homes, spending money on temporary shelter while missing the opportunity to turn their dwellings into sources of security and long-term value. Arcad explained that a home is not just a place to sleep, it can also be a foundation for financial stability. He told the story of a young man, Sharunata, who lived in a rented room. Every month he paid a significant portion of his earnings to his landlord, leaving little for savings or investment. Arcad asked him to consider what he would have if he redirected that rent toward owning his own home. By saving diligently, borrowing wisely, and investing in property, Sharunata could not only secure a roof over his head but also build an asset that could grow in value over time. The lesson here is that controlling your shelter expenses and investing in property can transform your financial life. Rent is a necessary expense for many, but ownership allows you to build equity rather than spending indefinitely on something that gives no long-term return. Arcad advised that one should strive to make a dwelling a profitable investment, ensuring that the money spent today contributes to wealth tomorrow. Arcad also emphasized prudence in choosing a dwelling. The home should be safe, functional, and affordable relative to one's earnings. Overspending on lavish homes or living beyond one's means can quickly drain wealth and undermine the habits of saving and investing. Balance is key. Spend wisely, live comfortably, but always plan for growth and security. This principle applies even in modern terms. Many financial advisors suggest that housing costs should not exceed a manageable portion of income. Paying more than you can afford, or purchasing property without careful planning, can leave a person financially stretched and vulnerable. Conversely, investing in property wisely, or in ways that generate income or appreciate over time, can provide stability and wealth accumulation. Arcad's wisdom also extended to the idea that owning a home creates a sense of responsibility and discipline. When you invest in something tangible and lasting, you are more likely to plan for the future, save regularly, and avoid frivolous spending. The home becomes more than shelter, it becomes a stepping stone toward financial independence. In addition, a well-chosen dwelling can create opportunities for additional income, such as renting out extra rooms or leveraging property value for business ventures. Wealth building is not just about accumulation but also about creating systems where assets work for you. The citizens of Babylon learned that by making thoughtful choices about their homes, they could reduce living expenses, protect their savings, and turn one of life's largest costs into an instrument of growth. Shahrunada, through careful planning, eventually transitioned from renter to homeowner, experiencing the security and satisfaction that comes from making one's dwelling a profitable investment. Ultimately, Arcad's lesson was simple: do not let your largest expenses work against you. Transform them into opportunities for growth. Make choices that provide comfort, security, and future value, so that every coin spent contributes not only to your present needs but also to your long-term prosperity. Part 6. Ensure a future income. Arcad understood that wealth is not just about what you earn today but about securing resources for tomorrow. In Babylon, many people lived hand-to-mouth, focused entirely on immediate needs, with little thought for old age or unforeseen hardships. Arcad taught that financial security requires planning for the future and creating a steady income that endures beyond your working years. He shared the story of a man named Dabasir, a camel trader who once lived in debt and worry. Despite his hard work, he had no savings and no plan for the future. One day, he realized that he could not continue like this. His earnings were temporary, his obligations many, and his future uncertain. With Arcad's guidance, he learned to allocate a portion of his income toward long-term security, ensuring that even when work became difficult or impossible, he would have resources to rely upon. The principle is clear: always save and invest with the future in mind. This means planning for old age, unexpected emergencies, and potential opportunities that require capital. By ensuring a future income, you protect yourself and your family from dependency and uncertainty. Arcad emphasized that creating future income is not limited to traditional savings. Investments, business ventures, rental property, and other reliable sources of income can all contribute. The key is consistency and prudence, allocating resources regularly to vehicles that are likely to provide returns over time. This transforms ordinary earnings into a financial foundation that continues to grow and support you long after immediate work ceases. Modern examples echo this timeless wisdom. Retirement plans, pensions, stock investments, and insurance are contemporary tools that allow people to ensure income in the future. Those who neglect this step often find themselves struggling in later years, despite having earned well throughout life. The habit of thinking ahead is what separates temporary comfort from lasting prosperity. Arcad also stressed the importance of discipline and foresight. Creating a future income requires regular contributions, patience, and resisting the temptation to spend all available funds today. He argued that those who fail to prepare for tomorrow are vulnerable to misfortune, whether it comes as illness, economic downturn, or other life challenges. The story of Dabasir illustrates how thoughtful planning can transform a life. By dedicating even a small portion of his earnings to secure future income, he eventually achieved independence and confidence. He could take risks, pursue opportunities, and live with peace of mind, knowing that he had prepared for the inevitable uncertainties of life. Ultimately, Arcad's lesson teaches that wealth is not merely for present enjoyment but is a tool to ensure stability and security over a lifetime. By making decisions today that provide for tomorrow, you create a continuous cycle of growth and protection. Income earned now can generate resources that sustain you, your family, and your ventures far into the future. In short, ensuring a future income is a cornerstone of financial wisdom. It transforms wealth from a fleeting resource into a lasting asset, providing confidence, security, and the freedom to act wisely in all aspects of life. Those who heed this principle lay the foundation for prosperity that endures, no matter the circumstances. Part 7, Improve thy ability to earn. Arkad's final lesson to the people of Babylon was about the most powerful asset anyone possesses, their own ability to earn. He emphasized that wealth is not simply a matter of luck, inheritance, or even frugality alone. True prosperity comes to those who continually increase their skill, knowledge, and capacity to generate income. He told the story of a young man named Madan, who was skilled in trade but stagnant in his earning potential. Madan had mastered basic commerce but refused to learn new techniques, explore new markets, or adapt to changing conditions. As a result, while others around him flourished, he remained trapped in mediocrity. Arkad explained that the richest men in Babylon did not rely solely on saving or controlling expenditures, they invested in themselves. The principle is timeless: your knowledge, skills, and expertise are the engines of your financial growth. By studying, learning from mentors, and embracing new experiences, you increase the value you bring to your work, business, or profession. Higher value naturally leads to higher income. Wealth follows ability. Arkad also highlighted the importance of seeking wisdom. It is not enough to work harder, one must work smarter. Learning from those who have succeeded, understanding markets, and continually honing your craft allows you to seize opportunities that others cannot. In Babylon, the merchants who became wealthy were those who recognized that constant improvement was not optional, it was essential. Consider modern parallels. Professionals who upgrade their skills through training or education often find greater financial rewards. Entrepreneurs who study trends and refine their strategies expand their businesses. Even artists and craftsmen who dedicate themselves to improving technique and creativity find greater opportunities and recognition. Ability is directly tied to earning potential. Arkad reminded the citizens that investing in oneself requires discipline and effort. Reading, studying, practicing, and seeking guidance all demand time and commitment. But these investments yield returns far greater than any coin put into a risky venture. Your mind and abilities are your most valuable assets, and nurturing them ensures that wealth will follow naturally. He also warned against complacency. Even those who achieve success must continue learning. Markets change, opportunities shift, and skills can become outdated. Continuous improvement is the safeguard against stagnation and the key to sustaining prosperity over a lifetime. The story of Madan serves as a reminder that everyone has the potential to increase their earning capacity. It requires humility to recognize what you do not know, courage to seek guidance, and persistence to apply new knowledge effectively. Those who embrace this principle gradually transform their earning ability into lasting wealth. Ultimately, Arkad's message was clear: wealth is not a static prize but a dynamic outcome of knowledge, skill, and action. By improving your ability to earn, you create a life in which opportunity, security, and prosperity are within reach. Combining this principle with the earlier lessons of saving, controlling expenditures, investing, protecting assets, and planning for the future forms a complete framework for financial success. In the end, the richest man in Babylon became wealthy not by accident but by cultivating discipline, wisdom, and personal growth. And so can anyone who chooses to follow the same path. The timeless wisdom of the richest man in Babylon teaches us that financial success is not a matter of luck or inheritance, but of discipline, foresight, and action. From saving a portion of every coin earned, controlling expenditures, and making money work for you, to protecting wealth, investing in property, planning for the future, and improving your ability to earn, each lesson builds upon the last, creating a solid foundation for lasting prosperity. The stories of Arkad, Bansir, Kabai, Sharunata, Dabasir, and others show us that wealth is cultivated through habits, choices, and knowledge. Small, consistent steps taken wisely can transform ordinary earnings into extraordinary security and opportunity. It is not about quick riches but about steady, deliberate growth and responsibility. At Books Arena, we believe that applying these lessons in daily life can change your financial trajectory. Begin today by saving, spending wisely, investing prudently, and committing to continual learning. Over time, you will not only secure your future but also gain the confidence and freedom that come with true financial mastery. Remember, wealth is built one coin, one decision, and one improvement at a time. Let the wisdom of Babylon guide your steps, and you will create a life of stability, opportunity, and abundance.